Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for joining us this morning as World Vision rolls out the It Takes a World to End Violence Against Children campaign with partners from across 17 other Asian countries. As a leader in the movement to end violence, Sri Lanka has been identified as a pathfinding country in the global partnership to end violence against children. Today, we will share with you a 5-year evidence-based campaign launched by World Vision in 2017 to ignite change for children worldwide by building on earlier efforts, uniting on ongoing ones, and catalyzing initiatives with partners to end violence against children globally. Today, we will share with you the vision for It Takes a World and also hear from inspiring people from across the globe about the change that we hope to create. To begin with today's formalities, I would like to invite Mr. Daniel Selvanayagam to the podium. Mr. Selvanayagam has worked at World Vision for over 38 years in 4 country offices, that's in India, in Laos, in Bangladesh, and in Vietnam, and is the Senior Director to Operations for the East Asia region, and he's based in Bangkok. Please give Mr. Selvanayagam a round of applause as he joins us in delivering the welcome address.
Thank you for this kind introduction. I don't know whether I deserve this 38 years, but 38 years of dirtying my hands with the poor and the children in particular. I was so happy to see today morning some of the kids, youngsters who have worked with me even in Bangladesh, who is in this crowd. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to World Vision's inaugural launch of a 5-year campaign, It Takes a World to End Violence Against Children in Asia. I bring in greetings from World Vision regional leadership and the partnership leaders on this inaugural and memorable occasion. Looking at this crowd who has come from 15 different countries, we have come with one purpose: how to make this world a better place for the children. Each one of us are having or doing, visioning, implementing many programs in our organization, in our regions. But today, we have come together to talk, plan, vision, and do together to make this happen as a team. I'd like to specially welcome now honorable clergy, the chief guest, Mrs. Chandrani Sineratne, Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Affairs, who has come to grace this occasion, representatives from the diplomatic community, Dr. Rinchal Chopal, whom I had the privilege of chatting before this event, and his involvement, his support to World Vision and to the faith-based organization as the South Asia Initiative. He's the Director General for the South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children. Ms. Jean Duff, representing the Global Partnership of Faith and Development, who is instrumental in getting this organized. I'd like to thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Danan, our National Director for World Vision Lanka, and his team, who has been gracious to host us. Partnership of the Global Faith Forum, members of the media, UN and NGO partners, youth representatives, distinguished other guests, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to look at the new ways how we can work to better in partnership with faith-based organizations and youth. If we line up 10 children from our region, Asia region, from the age group of 2 to 17, at least 6 would have experienced some form of violence last year alone. This is not one as an exceptional one I'm talking about. I come from India, that was my place of my origin. During my school days, corporal punishment was acceptable. We went through it. Now, can anyone go through it? No, it's not possible. But the culture allows it to happen in some countries. So it's a proof of rather a culturally ingrained sanction and systematic violence is happening on the children. This we want to do something to stop that from happening. And in India, which is part of this region, in every second, a boy or a girl is being abused. In Sri Lanka, at least 3 boys or girls are molested daily. So happy to know, recently Sri Lankan government has launched its national partnership to end violence against children. What a way to move forward. So there is a desire from the government, there's a desire from NGOs, UN, faith-based organization. If we can work together, we can eradicate this menace completely. We do have to have that political will to make that happen. Mindset change, behavioral change has to happen. First with us and with the people with whom we interact, with whom we work. And World Vision has got working where we have about a 40,000 strong workforce. All the countries where we have its Take the World launch have deliverable indicators so that it can be measured and we are kept accountable for. If each one of us together makes measurable, deliverable impact, which affects our children, who is going to be our future. What a future, not only for the children, for the country as a whole. The country will prosper in the coming days. We may not be there to see it. In fact, I will never be able to see that impact happen. But we can leave a legacy. I call upon you to be part of this journey. Media. Media plays a very important role in the recent years with regard to policy changes, even changing the governments. If they can take a role, an important role, to give the priority to issues related to children, rather not at the end of the page or in the small one, bring it to the focal front of their news, Is it print media or television media? They can also play a big part in changing this. So we want to invite the media to join us in this journey. Friends, 8 of 10 countries in the world, in every corner, identify some form of faith, practice some form of faith. 4 out of 10 countries, where we count almost 200 countries in the world, have official preferred state religion. Faith leaders are very key people in all these countries. They have the authority, they are the authority figure. I was taught in my early days, when I used to question some of their views, my mother used to always say, don't talk against them, because they are only answerable to God. You are not to be questioning them, so that they have that kind of authority figure in our society. They can also play a big part to end the violence against children within their own ranks among their followers. Today, we are going to have faith leaders from different faiths discuss their perspective of what to do more they can do together. They will be able to, we are going to listen to them. I just wanted to just be very brief, tell you a story which I heard. It can be true, it can be a fictional. There was a highway going, both sides of the highway there were villages. A big tree fell down, blocking the road. Both sides of the roads, cars were piling up. The villagers came for the rescue of removing that big trunk. They could not do anything. From the cars and the buses, people got down. They were engineers, they were doctors, they're strong men, weak men. They all wanted to just move the none. They could not move it. But when one old man came, was watching this, and say, I will sing a song, we will all lift in synchronization, in coordination. So he was saying 1, 2, 3, like that. 1, 2, 3, like that. So with that, the trunk started moving. They were able to throw it to the side, and the traffic started moving on. Nothing is impossible, friends. We all can move. Not only in our talk, policy changes. If we can do together, we can make this happen. If 6 out of 10 youth adults worldwide, aged 15 to 24, here live in Asia. 6% of the world's population, 15 to 24, live in Asia. So they are very important. We need to listen to them to see what their challenges they face, their concerns they have, the role that they have to play as a young people. Their voice, we'll give them not only hope, we'll give them a voice. And then we will see as a team how faith leaders can be of some help to them to make this world a better place. We are fortunate to have Dr. Rinchen Chopal, the Director General of South Asia Initiative to End Violence, here to us, not only to encourage us, but also think about challenging new ways to give reasons not to lose hope. He has done a lot of work in that. We are looking forward for that. I call upon all of you in this journey to walk closely hand in hand to end the violence against the children. And by this afternoon, we will have some tangible things coming out with this discussion and panel. And I'm sure with you, along with others, we are going to take something tangible to hold us accountable to the world, to the people, and to God. All the best. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Selvanagam, for giving us an opening to this program and also for inviting everyone to make an impact. Those are very important words. And of course, by the end of this evening, you did say measurable impact, deliverable impact. Those are important words to keep in mind as we go through today's proceedings. I now have the honor of inviting our guests for the traditional lighting of the oil lamp. And I'd like to invite the following dignitaries. Ms. Chandrani Senaratna, the Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Affairs. Dr. Rinchen Chopel, Director General, South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children. Ms. Paula Bulencia, UNICEF Representative. Mr. Danan Senitraja, National Director, World Vision Lanka. Mr. Daniel Selvanayagam, Senior Director Operations, World Vision East Asia. Mr. Otto Farkas, Program Director, World Vision South Asia Pacific. Ms. Jean Duff, Partnership for Faith and Development. Venerable Mandala Lankara Thero. Reverend Christo Grayling, World Vision Senior Director of Faith, Advocacy and External Engagement. Reverend Brahmachari Darshan, representing the Hindu faith. Pastor Akash Moses, representing the Christian faith. Mr. Anwar Khan, representing the Islamic faith. Youth delegate, we have a youth delegate who will also be joining us in lighting the oil lamp, Francisca Melina Sareng from Indonesia. Mr. Abid Gulza, Regional Director Advocacy and Justice for Children, East Asia region. Mr. Deepesh Paul Thakur, Regional Director Advocacy and Justice for Children, South Asia and the Pacific region. Fung Tran, Regional Director Communications, ESO. Ms. Aparna Rongong, Technical Advisor, Child Protection, TSO, and the Honorary Consul for the Philippines, Mrs. Sriyal Dissanayaka. Ladies and gentlemen and clergy, we'd like to ask you to please join us in lighting the oil lamp. And with that, I would like to invite the following dignitaries to join us at the head table. Mrs. Chandrani Senaratna, Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Affairs. Dr. Rinchin Chopel, Director General, South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children. Ms. Jean Duff, Partnership for Faith and Development. Dr. Danan Senatiraja, National Director, World Vision Lanka. Mr. Daniel Selvanayagam, Senior Director Operations, World Vision East Asia. Mr. Otto Farkas, Program Director, World Vision South Asia Pacific. And our youth representative, Francisca Melina Saring from Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please do us the honors of joining us on stage at our head table. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take a look at the global campaign video. This video shows the daily life of children. It's a story of vulnerability, but also a story of hope.
Crashing down around my feet, you light my way, you're my release. So say you'll watch over me when I'm in too deep. Every time you sheltered me from home, you showed me truth, you kept me warm. And every time you left me on the street, I found my way, I found my say you'll watch over me when I'm in too deep.
have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was a global campaign video. Like we said, there are stories of struggle, but also stories of hope. And our hope, I believe, for everyone in this audience, is for a brighter future for our children. I now have the honor of introducing our guest of honor for today. The South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children, or SAIVIC for short, is a SARC apex body, which is an intergovernmental body with a vision and a mandate to end violence against children. And Dr. Chopel is currently the Director General of SAIVAC. A Bhutanese national, Dr. Rinchen Chopel, is a medical doctor by profession with an advanced degree in human rights, a PhD fellow in human rights, and a postgraduate fellow in international humanitarian law. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our guest of honor, Dr. Rinchen Chopel.
Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest. The Chief Guest is not only the Chief Guest of the launch and the Secretary of the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs, she is also the governing board member of SAIVAC in Sri Lanka, so therefore my immediate boss in Sri Lanka. I'm very happy that she is the Chief Guest today. That gives me a chance to catch up on some of our, issues that, can only be taken into account in forums like this. Other dignitaries on the dais, distinguished guests, and most distinguished delegates to this important launch. It takes a world to end violence against children. Now, for the last 3-4 days, I kept playing with this slogan and said, what should I talk about when I come to this forum, where at times I felt I was not qualified, actually, to be invited as a guest of honor. Invariably in the forum, I'm sure there are more personalities who have invested more time, energy, more sweat, more heartaches than I've done in my lifetime working for children, and therefore more deserving. So I started off putting together a few paragraphs with a lot of data and information about South Asia. And then last night, I sat down to look through that and then felt very funny about what I put together, because I felt that it is like, what I'm talking about is going to be like talking to people who know more about what I'm talking about, and therefore could not really make myself convinced that I can get the message through. And I'm sure some of you who have heard me before, as a Buddhist, we have a saying, and as a Buddhist, since I'm a Buddhist, we have a saying which says, no point talking or teaching Buddhism to the Buddha. So there's no point talking about what child rights is or what violence against children is to all of you. You know more about it than I do. But definitely, I believe that SAIVAC as an entity, or SAIVAC as a regional movement, does have some relevance in this whole global campaign that World Vision is putting together and launching today. You're talking about a world, and SAIVAC actually covers a region of the world that actually has a huge burden of challenges. SAIVAC, when it started off with a lot of nightmare. It still has a lot of nightmares, but lesser than what it used to be. It was triggered off by the global study on violence against children, and the type of violence children of South Asia actually suffered from. And the governments who came together in Islamabad in 2005, and then subsequently in 2006, where a ministerial meeting was held with the support of the then South Asia Action and Coordination Group to End Violence Against Children, which is a UN NGO platform, a decision was taken that South Asia need to create a response to address that. And so a South Asia Forum was created with a rotating secretariat, which Pakistan then hosted. But as time went by, we found that it was not doing any substantive or any meaningful work. And along the way, I actually got dragged into being the coordinator of the 8 countries in setting an agenda and moving this forum into a more tangible, action-oriented direction. So along the way, we landed up with a 3rd ministerial meeting in 2009, where a decision was taken that we need to create a more specific, action-oriented movement, which also is grounded with a permanent secretariat. That's how South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children came into being in 2009. 2010, I was again made responsible as the Director General of SIVAC, and till today, I'm beginning to regret that day. SIVAC, as many of you will know, is an intergovernmental body. But it is probably the only intergovernmental body in the world that has civil society, children, and UN NGO representative in its governance structure. And it was negotiated under very difficult circumstances. Today, 8 governments sent 8 governing board members, and Secretary represents Sri Lanka on that board. And then the civil society, you must have heard about the NACGs, the National Action and Coordination Groups for Ending Violence Against Children, which is the civil society platform we created, which actually has its own governance structure with a chair and a co-chair elected over a period of 2 years. And through a rotation among member states, 2 representatives come as full-fledged board members, 2 come as observers. And the observers actually learn 1 year the ropes, observe what is happening in the governing board. Then they graduate to be full-fledged board members. We have 4 children in the governing board in the same process. And in Sri Lanka, World Vision leads as the co-chair of NACG India. And therefore, I have my other boss in the crowd, Chandila Columbage. Now, where does World Vision feature in all this dynamics? World Vision has been an active member of the South Asia Action and Coordination Group right from the beginning. World Vision also took leadership of the South Asia Action and Coordination Group between 2013 and 14. And during that time, we negotiated through the governing board, through the intergovernmental process, under a lot of stress and strain, a desk review to understand what type of faith-based approaches are happening in South Asia. And through that desk review, in Colombo in 2016, a decision was given by the governing board to SIVAC Director General to initiate tangible actions or partnerships or initiatives with the faith-based organizations or faith-based leaders to set up a regional SIVAC interfaith mechanism that would spearhead ending violence against children and support the South Asia movement. So there are a lot of these, different dynamics within which World Vision has been an integral part of SIVAC. I'm sure Chandila and Michael Pradhan from World Vision India, as well as Dipesh and Arpana would have brought these messages to your organizations. But today I think one of the things which I felt need to bring to this forum is that it is not just the world that needs to come together. It's also us who are supposed to be the principal actors who are responsible to move development agenda for children that needs to come together. When I started off my first year, one of the nightmares I had was not knowing what was going on in South Asia, because if I go to UNICEF, UNICEF has a set of programs that doesn't touch UNIFEM or UNAP, or doesn't touch, let's say, World Vision or Plan. Everyone is going into their own different, compartments. And how do we bring everyone together? So the effort was then to set up annual regional technical consultations that brought everybody on the same platform and brought common dialogue and common agenda together so that we set a common way forward. We still continue to try and do that, but we still have very, very difficult opportunities where we still don't talk to each other enough. We don't share enough information with each other. We continue to compartmentalize communities and children and continue to call our children this agency children, that agency children, and already start branding children, while in true essence we are trying to create a safer, healthier, and respectable spaces for children. Now, SciWork, in our very rudimentary efforts, with all the capacity that I can master, we are trying to tell everybody, this is South Asia's agenda, and this is where all of us come together, and this is how we move together. Now this is one I hope this movement will be able to inculcate, and I passed the same message when I had the privilege of joining the India World Vision campaign launch. Now, why this collective energy is important is because we need to, at the end of the day, work with state mechanisms. We cannot go and individually tell the governments, this is what I want to do. Every time I go and tell the government, say for example on child marriage, they say, oh, but I just had a discussion with this organization. They think it's only age that needs to be dealt with. Or they'll say it is sexual reproductive health. Or they will say it is skills and life development. Or they would say, look at survivors. But what we are not doing is trying to put a collective, comprehensive energy to be able to convince the government that they need to look at a holistic approach to whole issue of the child marriage agenda. Today, I'm happy to report to you that we have now initiated multiple entry points. The governments, because SciWork is the representation of the South Asia executive arm of the governments for women and children, so we continuously work with the governments. But we are also looking at different entry points. So we are now working with National Human Rights Commissions. We are working with the parliamentarian forums. We are working with the SARC law, which is the legal and judicial fraternity of South Asia. We need to find opportunities to bring everybody together on the same table. Most of the time, we make efforts, but we do not make enough energy to follow through those energy. And I think this is one of the challenges we have. So for SciWork, my request to the World Vision campaign today as you launch is that we need to create common, wider, inclusive platform so that everybody is able to share into what you are doing and have an opportunity to partake. I also want to request World Vision senior leadership that you have more than adequate space for collaboration at the regional level to influence decision making. But more importantly, you have more than enough space at the national level to set the national agenda. And SciWork, with its efforts to create that common energy both at the regional and national level, and upstream to influence global agenda and downstreams to effect grassroots changes, we'll be more than happy to provide whatever support space that World Vision requires to make your campaign effective, because at the end, it will make SciWork's work much more meaningful than it is just now effect. I'm not sure how many minutes I have. I was warned by my boss Chandila that you can go less than 15 minutes, but not more than 15 minutes. But this is such a wide area that unless and until we are able to understand the dynamics of working together, the times of working in isolation, in compartments is long gone. We need to be able to work together. We need to talk to each other. And one classical example why we need to do this is when we held the 4th SciWork ministerial meeting in India in May 2016. One of the things that we wanted to address was cross-border trafficking. And one of the essential aspects of cross-border trafficking was looking at how bilaterally or multilaterally we can operate through a common agenda. So I was asked to look at standard operating procedures. And after talking to all my colleagues in the ACCG, which includes World Vision, we finally came up that in Bangladesh alone, there are 12 standard operating procedures produced by 2 different organizations. So how do we deal with issues like that? So the ministerial meeting finally directed Dr. Rinchen and SciWork Regional Secretariat that, okay, you map out all the SOPs that are available in South Asia and then hold a regional consultation to develop one common SOP and then put it up to the next ministerial meeting for endorsement. So much work has gone in, and now we're back to square one to restart the whole process. And that's why it's important, I think, when we work as development partners, we need to be able to share and hold common dialogue so that we are able to achieve meaningful work for children. So that's why this campaign also brings that message home. And I think SciWork would be privileged to take this message to the SciWork Governing Board when we meet in Bhutan in March 2017. Now, my last aspect of what I wanted to bring this message to this forum is this. The campaign takes a bigger, much more wider approach, but at the end of the day, I think we need to make it meaningful to every small constituents that we deal with. We also have a process whereby all the regions of the world annually meet together under the umbrella of the UN Secretary General for ending violence against children. Next meeting of the cross-regional meeting is organized by SciWork. I'd like to invite World Vision's It Takes a World to End Violence Against Children campaign to that cross-regional meeting to share what has happened from now till then and what you want to do and how you can actually get all the regions of the world to actually take cognizance of this campaign's approach and vision and missions. I would also like to stress that World Vision country offices take active interest in the work that is going on in the member states, particularly in the NACGs, and how you can actually meaningfully contribute in driving the NACGs forward. Because at the end of the day, SciWork is the only platform where the governance structure, the political entity provides meaningful spaces for civil society in the decision making, which gets politically recognized and endorsed. There is no other platform that I know of anywhere, forget in South Asia, anywhere in the world. And if you play meaningful roles in the NACGs, automatically the work you do will get mainstreamed into larger regional planning and implementation. I want to take this opportunity to thank World Vision and those who are responsible to think that Dr. Rinchen should be invited to this forum. I am highly grateful. In 4 years, I managed to take a family holiday in Sri Lanka this time, using this opportunity. And I'm sure because of that, this campaign will stay also very close to my heart for a long time, and will be appreciated by Dr. Inchen's family, who actually is responsible to ensure that I perform effectively. I'm sure all of us know that, how important family is in your work. So thank you very much. And I also want to take this opportunity, since this is a World Vision event, thank Chandila and World Vision Lanka for your active role in the NACG Lanka. I want to also take the opportunity to pass my appreciation to World Vision India and the role of Michael Pradhan in NACG EVAC India. I also want to thank Dipesh and Arpana for their continued effort to support SIWAC both within and outside the SACG. And finally, I look forward to working with Jean as SIWAC is striving to move forward our SIWAC interfaith platform. We have been struggling with this for 1 year, but I don't want to jump into it without clearly understanding what it is. We have had 3 meetings, and I sorely miss Ajit today, but I believe we have a colleague from Ajit's office, and with Jean, hopefully by end of January, when we are hoping to hold that SIWAC interfaith platform, the terms of reference is already approved and it's on the ground. We'll probably have another entry point where violence against children can be more effectively addressed. I'm sorry if I dampened your mood and put you into a drowsy span, but hopefully it will give all of us an opportunity to realize that the work we do is so critical, but not necessarily so exciting. But we have to move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chopel. I can assure you, and I'm speaking on behalf of the audience here, you didn't put a dampen on us. We are all very excited. It was a good reminder that we need to unite and come together. So thank you very much once again. It takes a world to end violence against children. This is what we've been talking about, and it definitely helps to have the celebrities talk a little bit about it and create some awareness, especially when you're talking to the general public. So we've had a few celebrities talk about this initiative, and the very popular Game of Thrones actor Liam Cunningham visited Myanmar earlier this year and went to Myanmar to see the World Vision's work in the country with former child soldiers. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
It seems like a really weird thing to be saying, talk about stating the obvious, ending violence against children. But it is everybody's responsibility that if they see it, if they're aware of it, to speak out against it. There's an old saying that all it needs for evil to triumph is for good people to stay silent. And that could be applied to violence against children in all its forms. Be it physical violence, be it exploitation, sex trafficking, any of those things. It takes a world to stop violence, and everybody that's involved and aware, it needs to do whatever they can to stop it. It seems like a...
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Liam Cunningham has to say. We have a few more Game of Thrones actors who will be sharing their celebrity endorsements a little later on. Right now, I have the great honor of inviting our chief guest to the podium, Ms. Chandrani Senaratne, Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Affairs. As one of the 12 pathfinding countries, Sri Lanka is taking a lead globally to end violence, including abuse, neglect, and exploitation against children by 2030. And Ms. Senaratne's ministry has taken a lead on this initiative, and we'd like to invite her to speak to us in the audience. And as she joins us, we'd like to ask the audience to give her a round of applause.
Good morning to everybody. Our guest of honor, Dr. Inchen Chapel, and the members of the head table, and guest of honors, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I'm happy to be at this Asia Pacific launch of World Vision on ending violence against children, representing the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs of Sri Lanka. Currently, my ministry facilitates the response of Sri Lanka as a pathfinder country to this global call on ending violence against children. Violence against children includes all forms of physical, sexual, mental violence. We know the goal to end violence against children may sound too ambitious. After all, we are not only aiming at reducing violence, but actually saying ending violence against children. And we believe it can be done in this generation. Here, I see representatives from many countries and individuals from Sri Lanka, from different organizations, be it faith organizations, development or humanitarian agencies, or United Nations agencies, the civil society in general. They have one thing in common, that is the will to work tirelessly to bring this problem to an end. We all work with children in difficult situations. Some of you work with street children. Some work with the institutionalized. Some with the trafficked into sex trade. Some of you watch over to protect children from cyber-related sexual violence. And some of you advocate for the rights of children and provide legal aid to these children. Then there are some of you have spent a lifetime demanding an end to undermarriages. Similarly, some of you labor to make sure that children are in school and not working as low-paid workers. And there are those who run shelters for these abused children. This is a salute to you all, and a call to join hands whenever possible. On 2nd June 2017, National Partnership to End Violence Against Children in Sri Lanka was launched as a part of new celebrative partnership between the government, civil society, faith organizations, the private sector, the media, children, NGOs, INGOs, and other key stakeholders. Strengthened by the strong commitment and support by our government, this partnership has been able to grow and start a steady process to work towards putting an end to the violence against children of Sri Lanka is vulnerable for. As a government, we are also committed to work with other countries, particularly in the Asia region, in helping each other to build a safer world for all of our children. In the global sphere, violence against children is widespread and remains a daily occurrence for millions of children. I do not need to highlight, but all the countries represented in this forum have their own heavy load of child abuse and violence against children. In the light of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted by world leaders in September 2015, we are all part of a plan to build a common understanding prioritizing the prevention of violence against children. We must recognize that sustainable development cannot be achieved unless all children live free from fear and violence. So, in conclusion, I shall say we are honored to join the stage with World Vision to reaffirm its message that it takes a world to end violence against children, starting here at home. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Senatna, for your presence here today. And we look forward to Sri Lanka's vision for 2030 becoming a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to hear from the World Vision leaders. World Vision Asia Pacific has 17 national officers, and today we will hear from some of the countries.
In Bangladesh, 77% children experienced violence at school. About 87% children experience violence at home, which is a panic, I will say, which is very much agony in their life. I would like to request or appeal to the government, especially to execute Child Protection Policy 2030 and also strengthen monitoring and law enforcement at the local level, which is especially system strengthening. Together, let us end violence against children at home, at school, at workplace.
In Cambodia, far too many children experience violence in their own homes and in school, in the form of physical discipline and emotional abuse. This violence is most often perpetrated by those closest to them, parents, relatives, and teachers. It is time for us to come together and put a stop to it in our own homes, in our own schools, and in the homes and schools of children all across Cambodia. Enough is enough.
In Indonesia, it shows that 1 every 2 child boys and 1 every 3 child girls aged 13 to 17 has suffered from physical, emotional, sexual violence in his or her life, which occur in their home, school, or public place. All of us can contribute to end violence against children because it starts from ourselves.
Across the world, millions of children live in fear. Fear every day from a parent, a caregiver, or someone close to them. They fear violence that can affect them emotionally, physically, and have long-term effects on their future. But you can make a difference in changing this narrative. You can make a difference in changing and affecting children all around you every day. It takes a world to end violence against children, but together we can make this change.
Children in Myanmar face violence in all its forms, and so it is timely and opportune for us to be able to launch this campaign of ending violence against children with a special focus on preventing physical violence against children at home and at school, so that we can try and make a difference and bring an end to this scourge that has plagued Myanmar for years and for years.
The focus of World Vision's campaign in Nepal is to end child marriage. World Vision calls on stakeholders for a more coordinated, comprehensive, and multi-sectoral approach. We want to ensure that the threats and vulnerabilities which children face in the world today are eradicated. We cannot do this as an individual organization. We must work together to make a violence-free environment a reality for children.
In India, this campaign, it takes every Indian to end child sexual abuse and exploitation, will focus on eliminating sexual violence against children. Through this 5-year campaign, we in World Vision India strive to impact 10 million children across the nation. We understand that the task ahead is not an easy one. It takes all of us here in India in Southeast Asia. In fact, it takes a world. In this journey, we seek the support of all our partners, parents, faith leaders, communities, government, civil society, children of course, and everyone.
In the countries of Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu and Timor-Leste, around 7 out of 10 children experience violence. World Vision wants to address this by ensuring the protection of 1.2 million children against sexual and physical violence in the home by 2021. We'll do this by working with parents so that they can meet their obligations as caregivers. We'll work alongside governments to ensure that there are laws and those laws are implemented. And to do this, we need your support. It takes all of us to end violence against children.
In the Philippines, child abuse cases are increasing. It is alarming because the country is now ranking 10th worldwide on online sexual exploitation of children. Thousands of innocent Filipino children are sexually exploited, forcing them to do, see, and hear things that they should not as children. It takes more than just our good intention. We need to do something. We need to start with something concrete. We need to work together. It takes you and me, all of us. It takes a world to end sexual exploitation of children.
Recent times have seen a disturbing rise in the violence against children in Sri Lanka and in Asia. As a child-focused organization, we must work towards ending every form of violence that is experienced by children. For a child to grow into a good human being, providing them with education, access to healthcare and nutrition, access to water and sanitation alone are not adequate. Their protection and emotional health are also very important. We want to encourage every nation to be part of this effort to end violence against children.
The more you hear these facts and figures from different parts of the world, it really does remind you that it honestly takes a world to end violence against children. With this in mind, we now are going to take a very short break. We have a 15-minute tea break. I'm timing this. I've got my watch on. And you will hear me in 15 minutes reminding you that you need to come back in. The tea break is just outside. You can walk through the same entrance that you came through. And we'll see you in just a few minutes. Thank you very much. The second session is up with our panelists. So we'd like to urge you to please come in and take your seats soon afterwards.
In Bangladesh, 77% children experienced violence at school. About 87% children experience violence at home, which is a panic, I will say, which is very much agony in their life. I would like to request or appeal to the government.
តាមរយៈការស្រាវជ្រាវរបស់រដ្ឋាភិបាលនិងអង្គការ UNICEF បានឲ្យដឹងថា 50% នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាលើរាងកាយពួកគេបានរំលឹកពីការទទួលនៅការក្តិចទាត់ធាក់ឬវាយនឹងវត្ថុផ្សេងៗ 1/4 នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាត្រូវបានរកឃើញថាពិតជាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវចិត្តពីសមាជិកក្រុមគ្រួសាររបស់ពួកគេពិតមែនកុមារប្រហែល 5% បានរាយការណ៍ថាពួកគេពិតជាបានទទួលរងនូវការរំលោភបំពានផ្លូវភេទ 3/4 នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាបានរាយការណ៍ថាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវកាយផ្លូវចិត្តនិងផ្លូវភេទតែអ្នកគិតថាកុមារក្នុងសហគមន៍មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេខ្ញុំគិតថាពេលខ្លះគឺខ្ញុំមានសុវត្ថិភាពតែពេលខ្លះអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេព្រោះថាភូមិឃុំខ្ញុំក៏ភូមិខ្ញុំខ្លះកន្លែងខ្លះក៏មានក្មេងទំនើបខ្លះអត់មានក្មេងទំនើបវាមានសុវត្ថិភាពខ្លះអត់ខ្លះអញ្ចឹងវានៅតែអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពដដែលកុមារមួយចំនួនហ្នឹងគឺគាត់បានគិតថាគាត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពហើយប៉ុន្តែខ្លះទៀតគឺគាត់គិតថាគាត់អត់ទាន់មានទេតើអ្វីទៅដែលធ្វើឲ្យអ្នកមានអារម្មណ៍ថាมันមានសុវត្ថិភាពភូមិឃុំខ្ញុំមានចោរកម្មមានការលួចឆក់ប្លន់មានក្មេងទំនើបមានការ ការប្រើប្រាស់អំពើហិង្សាលើគ្រួសារលើកុមារជាដើមហ្នឹងគឺធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំហ្នឹងអត់មានគិតថាខ្លួនហ្នឹងអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេព្រោះមានដូចជាការអំពើហិង្សាជួញដូរគ្រឿងញៀនសាបគ្រឿងស្រវឹងការអំពើចោរកម្មឆក់ប្លន់និងមានផ្សេងទៀតប្រើគ្រឿងញៀនជួនកាលតែគាត់វាយគ្នាអីចឹងនៅក្នុងភូមិ
តើអ្នកចង់ឲ្យមនុស្សពេញវ័យធ្វើអ្វីខ្លះដើម្បីបញ្ចប់អំពើហិង្សាលើកុមារ
ខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យគាត់ហ្នឹងមានវិជាការពារគ្រប់ភូមិថាមួយភូមិត្រូវមានវិជាការពារមួយកន្លែងចឹងដើម្បីការពារមើលកុមារមើលការពារកុមារឬការពារមនុស្សអ្នកនៅក្នុងភូមិហ្នឹងកុំឲ្យមានអំពើចោរកម្មឬក៏ធ្វើប្រើប្រាស់អំពើហិង្សាលើកុមារ
ចង់ឲ្យក្រុមអមអាជ្ញាធរចូលរួមដើម្បីជួយការពារកុមារ
ខ្ញុំនឹងផ្សព្វផ្សាយអំពីសិទ្ធិកុមារឲ្យតម្លៃទៅលើកុមារធ្វើជាគំរូល្អឲ្យកុមារបានឃើញ
ប្រសិនបើអ្នកជាអាជ្ញាធរតើអ្នកនឹងធ្វើអ្វីខ្លះដើម្បីបង្រឹងការការពារកុមារនៅក្នុងសហគមន៍របស់អ្នក
ហើយបើសិនជាពួកខ្ញុំជាមេឃុំវិញខ្ញុំសូវតែចោះបង្រឹងសមត្ថភាពចោះបង្រឹងប្រាប់បងប្អូនកូនចៅបងប្អូនយើងហ្នឹងប្រាប់ថាកុំឲ្យលួចជួញដូរកុមារឬជួញដូរផ្លូវភេទយកកុមារទៅធ្វើអីផ្សេងអញ្ចឹងហើយខ្ញុំនឹងជួលឲ្យប៉ូលីសការពារនៅមួយភូមិហ្នឹងឲ្យនៅដាក់តាមភូមិមួយខ្ញុំនឹងចាប់ប្រតិការចាប់ពួកដែលធ្វើអំពើខុសច្បាប់នៅក្នុងស្រុកឬឃុំរបស់យើងដើម្បីឲ្យកុមារនិងប្រជាជនរបស់យើងមានសុវត្ថិភាពល្អ
តើអ្នកអាចធ្វើអ្វីដើម្បីបញ្ចប់អំពើហិង្សា
សម្រាប់ខ្លួនខ្ញុំផ្ទាល់គឺខ្ញុំខ្លួនឯងបដិញ្ញាថាអត់ធ្វើអំពើហិង្សាទេទៅលើក្មេងៗឬក៏អ្នកតូចជាងខ្លួនព្រោះគាត់ថាអត់បានអីមកវិញទេហើយអាចផ្សព្វផ្សាយប្រាប់មិត្តភ័ក្តិបងប្អូនអញ្ចឹងឲ្យពួកគាត់យល់ដឹងអំពីអំពើហិង្សាហ្នឹង ខ្ញុំអាចចែកចាយមតិយោបល់ហ្នឹងទៅដល់កុមារផ្សេងទៀតឲ្យគេយល់ដឹងអំពីការជួញដូរកុមារឬការជួញដូរផ្លូវភេទហ្នឹងដើម្បីប្រាប់ពួកគាត់ហ្នឹងកុំឲ្យធ្វើតាមគេឬតាមការបញ្ចុះបញ្ចូលគេកុំឲ្យគាត់ចាញ់បោកគេទៅថ្ងៃក្រោយទៀត
តាមរយៈការស្រាវជ្រាវបានបង្ហាញឲ្យឃើញថាកុមារតែងតែទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវកាយពីមនុស្សដែលគេស្គាល់និងទុកចិត្តដូចជាឪពុកម្ដាយជាពិសេសម្ដាយនិងគ្រូបង្រៀនជាពិសេសគ្រូបង្រៀនប្រុស គេរកឃើញថាជនល្មើសមិនមែនជាជនចម្លែកមកពីឆ្ងាយនោះទេពួកគេគឺជាអ្នកជិតខាងឬជាមិត្តភក្តិដៃគូនិងជាសមាជិកគ្រួសាររបស់កុមារ
Хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсооё. Монгол улс өргөн уудам нутаг дэвсгэртэй, байгалийн үзэсгэлэнт газар ихтэй, мал аж ахуй газар тариалан эрхэлдэг 3 сая гаруй хүн амтай. Үүнээс 1 сая 79 мянга гаруй 18 хүртэлх насны хүүхдүүд. Хүүхдүүдийн 50 орчим хувь нь улсын нийслэл Улаанбаатар хотноо, үлдсэн хувь нь орон нутагт амьдардаг. Дэлхийн зүүн олон улсын байгууллага нь дэлхийн 100 гаруй оронд салбартай хүүхэд төвд нөлөөлөл, хүмүүнлэг болон хөгжлийн олон улсын байгууллага билээ. Дэлхийн зүүн олон улсын байгууллагын Аз номхон далайн бүсээс 1993 онд Монгол улсын зуудын гамшигт өртсөн иргэдэд туслах яаралтай тусламжийн төслийг хэрэгжүүлснээр үйл ажиллагааны эхлэлээ тавьсан ба өөрийн суурин төлөөлөгчийн газрыг Дэлхийн зүүн Монгол нэртэйгээр 1995 онд албан ёсоор нээсэн. Дэлхийн зүүн Монгол олон улсын байгууллага нь бие махбодын шийтгэл болон хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсооё сэдвт хүүхэд хамгааллын 5 жилийн хаяныг үндэсний хэмжээнд орон даяар олон улсын хүүхдийн эрхийг хамгаалах өдөр албан ёсоор эхлүүллээ. Энэ аяныг Монгол улсын гэр бүл хүүхэд залуучуудын хөгжлийн газартай хамтарч хүүхдийн эрх, хөгжил, хүмүүжлийн эерэг аргын талаар эцэг эх, хүүхэд, хүн бүрийн мэдлэг, хандлага, дадлыг өөрчлөхөөр зорж байна.
Хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсоогоо нэгдэж тууц ажилласандаа би маш их баяртай. Түүнээс зогсон өнөөдөр миний баярын өдөр болохоор би бүр их баяртай. Үе тэнгийнхаа хүүхдүүдийг мансайлан хамтран ажиллах нэгдтэй итгэлтэй байна. Тэгээд Монголын бүх хүүхдүүдэд энэ аянд нэгдэрэй гэж уриалъя.
5-аас 17 настай монгол хүүхдүүдийн 15.9% нь хүүхдийн хөдөлмөр эрхэлж байгаа бол нийт хүүхдүүдийн 80% нь ямар нэг бие махбодын шийтгэл, асрамжийн газар болон дотуур байранд амьдардаг хүүхдүүдийн 85.1% нь зодуурт өртдөг гэсэн судалгаа гарчээ. Монголчуудын 21.6% нь ядуурлын шугамнаас доогуур амжиргааны түвшинд амьдарч байгаа бол 5-аас 14 настай нийт хүүхдийн 36.5% нь амжиргааны баталгаажих түвшнөөс доогуур орлоготой гэр бүлд амьдарч байна. Хүүхэд бид хүчирхийллийг даслан зогсоохын тулд өөрсдийгөө хөгжүүлж нийгмийн үйл ажиллагаанд идэвхтэй оролцдог. Энэ нь хүүхэд биднийг хувийн зохион байгуулалтаа болгон төлөвшүүлж, зөв харилцаа, багаар ажиллах чадвар зэрэг амьдралын ухаантаас сургаж, ур чадваруудыг маань хөгжүүлдэг. Бид өсвөр үеийнхний хөгжлийн клубийнхэн.
Боловсрал эзэмшүүл мэрэгжилтэй болно, мэрэгжилтэй болол ажилтай бол сайхан амьдралтай байх болоо гэж бодсон.
Нэгэд намаагаас хамгаалж хайрладаг ч юм уу тийм аг нийтийн хайр үүсгдэг болохоор найзтай баярлалаа гэж хэлээ.
Энэ зөв боловсон зан суралцаж өөрийгөө нээх чадварт тусалдаг.
Бид өсвөр үеийнхний хөгжил хөтөлбөрт хамрагдсанаар өөрсдөө ямар нэг сайн үйлийг санаачлан, төлөвлөн, хэрэгжүүлэн, тайлагна.
Нөгөө нэгдүгээр ангийн хүүхдүүдэд тасалсан, багш нарт нь тасалсан. Тэгээд хүүхдүүдийнх нь болохоор нөгөө өсвөр сургалтанд тасалсан бол надад амар сайхан санагдсан.
Үе тэнгийн найзуудын маань нийгмийн оролцоо өндөр байгааг алдагдал хаягдлыг алтманг болгохын төслөөс тахаарч болно. Хаягдал материалаар ахуйн хэрэглээнд ашиглаж болох маш олон зүйлийг санаачилсан байгаа биз? Хог гэж байдаггүй. Юмхнаар хэрэгцээтэй юу ч хийж бүтээж болдгийг тод харуулсан найзуудын маань бүтээл.
Одоо өөрийнхөө сурснаа бол бусдаа хуваалцаад үнэхээр одоо сэтгэл өндөр байна.
Хүүхдүүд бид өөрсдийн амьдарч байгаа орнуудад сургууль, гэр бүлийнхээ амьдралд идэвхтэй, хариуцлагатай, бүтээлчээр оролцож байж гэмээр улс орныхоо манлай хөгжлийн түүчээ болно. Бид хүчирхийллийн эсрэг дуу хоолой нэгтэй байна.
Одоо ямар нэгэн буруу зүйл хийсэн бол битээ загнаа, битээ зөхөө зүгээр тайлбарлаад хэлчихээ.
2014-өөс 2017 оны 5 дугаар сар хүртэлх хугацаанд хүүхдийн тусламжийн утас 108-д бие махбодын хүчирхийлэлтэй холбоотой 3035 дуудлага ирсэн ба харин захим дарамттай холбоотой 244, бэлгийн хүчирхийллийн 417, үл хайхрахтай холбоотой 1120 дуудлага ирсэн байна. 2017 оны эхний хагас жилийн үйл ажиллагааны тайлангаар нийт 29 орон нутгийн хөгжлийн хөтөлбөрийн зорилтод орон нутгуудад хүүхдийн хөгжил оролцооны клубүүдэд нийт 5374 хүүхэд хамрагдсан байна. Мөн түүнчлэн 25618 үе тэнгийнхэн нь сургууль дээр суурилсан үйл ажиллагаанд оролцжээ. Дэлхийн зүүн Монголын зорилтод хот хөдөөгийн орон нутагт нийтдээ 25 хүүхдийн оролцооны удирдах зөвлөл үйл ажиллагаа явуулж байна. Хүүхдүүд маань Монголын ирээдүй. Тэд бол эрх хэдлэгч бөгөөд аз жаргалтай, хамгаалагдсан аюулгүй орчинд амьдрах ёстой. Хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсооё. Бидний зүн хараа, хүүхэд бүрийн бүрэн дүүрэн амьдралын төлөө. Бидний залбирал, хүн бүрийн зүрх сэтгэл, түүнийг биелүүлэх хүсэл эрмэлзлийн төлөө.
मेरी उम्र है 12 साल। आगरा में रहता हूँ। मैं और मम्मी घर पे रहते हैं और मम्मी काम पे जाते हैं एक लड़का खिलाने के लिए और मैं जूते का काम करता हूँ। घर बेचा था, कुछ पैसा मिला था तो पापा के इलाज में लगाया था और दीदी कुछ पैसा बचा था तो दीदी की शादी कर दी। मैं सुबह उठता हूँ और बनाता हूँ, खाना खा के 9 बजे मैं काम पे जाता हूँ। फिर मेरी छुट्टी होती है 4:30 बजे, 4 बजे करीब। फिर मैं ट्यूशन जाता हूँ, ट्यूशन का काम करता हूँ। जो मैं काम करता हूँ मुझे वो पसंद नहीं है। मैं काम पे जाता हूँ, मेरी डांट भी पड़ जाती है मुझे काम के चक्कर में और मैं टूल लगाता हूँ, उससे मुझे वो आती है तो घबराहट सी होती है मुझे। मुझे काम से ज़्यादा स्कूल अच्छा लगता है। मुझे मैं काम पे नहीं जाऊंगा तो घर का खर्चा नहीं चल पाएगा क्योंकि किराया भी देना पड़ेगा और खाने के लिए भी परेशानी पड़ जाएगी। मैं जो काम पे जाता हूँ मुझे 100-200 रुपये मिलते हैं हफ्ते में तो मैं उन्हें मम्मी को दे देता हूँ। मम्मी घर का खर्चा चला लेगी। मुझे एक मौका मिलेगा तो मैं काम छोड़ के वापस स्कूल जाना चाहता हूँ। मेरा एक सपना है, मैं फौजी बनना चाहता हूँ क्योंकि देश के लिए कुछ सुरक्षा करना चाहता हूँ।
Ako si Agnes, 27 years old, taga Cagayan de Oro City. Noong 15 taong gulang pa lang ako, sumasayaw na ako sa bar isang beses kada linggo. Gusto ko sana tumigil sa pagsayaw para makapag-aral. Kaso, dumating yung ninang ko na recruiter. Kailangan ko daw makatulong sa mga gastusin sa bahay, pangkain, araw-araw. Doon natapos ang pagkabata ko. Nagsimula na ako ilabas sa mga customers. Mas malaki kasi ang kita kapag nilalabas kayo sa tila-table. 9 years din ako naging bayaran. Mula teenager hanggang tumanda na ako. Isip ko tuloy, yung sex pala kahit bata ka, pwede kahit kanino.
Tam រយៈការស្រាវជ្រាវរបស់រាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលនិងអង្គការ UNICEF បានឲ្យដឹងថា 50% នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាលើរាងកាយពួកគេបានរំលឹកពីការទទួលនៅការក្តិចទាត់ធាក់ឬវាយនឹងវត្ថុផ្សេងៗ 1/4 នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាត្រូវបានរកឃើញថាពិតជាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវចិត្តពីសមាជិកក្រុមគ្រួសាររបស់ពួកគេពិតមែនកុមារប្រហែល 5% បានរាយការណ៍ថាពួកគេពិតជាបានទទួលរងនូវការរំលោភបំពានផ្លូវភេទ 3/4 នៃកុមារកម្ពុជាបានរាយការណ៍ថាធ្លាប់ទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវកាយផ្លូវចិត្តនិងផ្លូវភេទតែអ្នកគិតថាកុមារក្នុងសហគមន៍មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេ
ខ្ញុំគិតថាពេលខ្លះគឺខ្ញុំមានសុវត្ថិភាពតែពេលខ្លះអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេព្រោះថាភូមិឃុំខ្ញុំក៏ភូមិខ្ញុំខ្លះកន្លែងខ្លះក៏មានក្មេងទំនើងខ្លះអត់មានក្មេងទំនើងវាមានសុវត្ថិភាពខ្លះអត់ខ្លះអញ្ចឹងវានៅតែអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពដដែលកុមារមួយចំនួនហ្នឹងគឺគាត់បានគិតថាគាត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពហើយប៉ុន្តែខ្លះទៀតគឺគាត់គិតថាគាត់អត់ទាន់មានទេ
តើអ្វីទៅដែលធ្វើឲ្យអ្នកមានអារម្មណ៍ថាมันមានសុវត្ថិភាព
ភូមិឃុំខ្ញុំមានចោរកម្មមានការលួចឆក់ប្លន់មានក្មេងទំនើងមានការប្រើប្រាស់អំពើហិង្សាលើគ្រួសារលើកុមារជាដើមហ្នឹងគឺធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំហ្នឹងអត់មានគិតថាខ្លួនហ្នឹងអត់មានសុវត្ថិភាពទេព្រោះមានដូចជាការអំពើហិង្សាជួញដូរគ្រឿងញៀនសាបគ្រឿងសង្វឹងការអំពើចោរកម្មឆក់ប្លន់និងមានផ្សេងទៀត គ្រឿងញៀនជួនកាលតែគាត់វាយគ្នាអីចឹងនៅក្នុងភូមិ
តើអ្នកចង់ឲ្យមនុស្សពេញវ័យធ្វើអ្វីខ្លះដើម្បីបញ្ចប់អំពើហិង្សាលើកុមារ
ខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យគាត់ហ្នឹងមានវិជាការពារគ្រប់ភូមិថាមួយភូមិត្រូវមានវិជាការពារមួយកន្លែងចឹងដើម្បីការពារមើលកុមារមើលការពារកុមារឬការពារអ្នកនៅក្នុងភូមិហ្នឹងកុំឲ្យមានអំពើចោរកម្មឬក៏ធ្វើប្រើប្រាស់អំពើហិង្សាលើកុមារ
ខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យក្រុមអមអាជ្ញាធរចូលរួមដើម្បីការពារជួយការពារកុមារ
ខ្ញុំនឹងផ្សព្វផ្សាយអំពីសិទ្ធិកុមារឲ្យតម្លៃទៅលើកុមារធ្វើជាគំរូល្អឲ្យកុមារបានឃើញ
ប្រសិនបើអ្នកជាអាជ្ញាធរតើអ្នកនឹងធ្វើអ្វីខ្លះដើម្បីបង្រឹងការការពារកុមារនៅក្នុងសហគមន៍របស់អ្នក
ហើយបើសិនជាពួកខ្ញុំជាមេឃុំវិញខ្ញុំសូវតែចោះបង្រឹងសមត្ថភាពចោះបង្រឹងប្រាប់បងប្អូនកូនចៅបងប្អូនយើងហ្នឹងប្រាប់ថាកុំឲ្យលួចជួញដូរកុមារឬជួញដូរផ្លូវភេទយកកុមារទៅធ្វើអីផ្សេងអញ្ចឹងហើយខ្ញុំនឹងជួលឲ្យប៉ូលីសការពារនៅមួយភូមិហ្នឹងឲ្យនៅដាក់តាមភូមិមួយខ្ញុំនឹងចាប់ប្រតិការចាប់ពួកដែលធ្វើអំពើខុសច្បាប់នៅក្នុងស្រុកឬឃុំរបស់យើងដើម្បីឲ្យកុមារនឹងប្រជាជនរបស់យើងមានសុវត្ថិភាពល្អ
តើអ្នកអាចធ្វើអ្វីដើម្បីបញ្ចប់អំពើហិង្សា
សម្រាប់ខ្ញុំផ្ទាល់គឺខ្ញុំខ្លួនឯងបដិញ្ញាថាអត់ធ្វើអំពើហិង្សាទេទៅលើក្មេងៗឬក៏អ្នកតូចជាងខ្លួនព្រោះគាត់ថាអត់បានអីមកវិញទេហើយអាចផ្សព្វផ្សាយប្រាប់មិត្តភ័ក្តិបងប្អូនអញ្ចឹងឲ្យពួកគាត់យល់ដឹងអំពីអំពើហិង្សាហ្នឹង
ខ្ញុំអាចចែកចាយមតិយោបល់ហ្នឹងទៅដល់កុមារផ្សេងទៀតឲ្យគេយល់ដឹងអំពីការជួញដូរកុមារឬការជួញដូរផ្លូវភេទហ្នឹងដើម្បីប្រាប់ពួកគាត់ហ្នឹងកុំឲ្យធ្វើតាមគេឬតាមការបញ្ចុះបញ្ចូលគេកុំឲ្យគាត់ចាញ់បោកគេទៅថ្ងៃក្រោយទៀត
តាមរយៈការស្រាវជ្រាវបានបង្ហាញឲ្យឃើញថាកុមារតែងតែទទួលរងនូវអំពើហិង្សាផ្លូវកាយពីមនុស្សដែលគេស្គាល់និងទុកចិត្តដូចជាឪពុកម្ដាយជាពិសេសម្ដាយនិងគ្រូបង្រៀនជាពិសេសគ្រូបង្រៀនប្រុស គេរកឃើញថាជនល្មើសមិនមែនជាជនចម្លែកមកពីឆ្ងាយនោះទេពួកគេគឺជាអ្នកជិតខាងឬជាមិត្តភក្តិដៃគូនិងជាសមាជិកគ្រួសាររបស់កុមារ
Хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсооё. Монгол улс өргөн уудам нутаг дэвсгэртэй байгалийн үзэсгэлэнт газар ихтэй мал аж ахуй газар тариалан эрхэлдэг 3 сая гаруй хүн амтай. Үүнээс 1 сая 79 мянга гаруй 18 хүртэлх насны хүүхдүүдийн 50 орчим хувь нь улсын нийслэл Улаанбаатар хотноо, үлдсэн хувь нь орон нутагт амьдардаг. Дэлхийн зүүн олон улсын байгууллага нь дэлхийн 100 гаруй орондоо салбартай хүүхэд төвд нөлөөлөл хүмүүнлэг болон хөгжлийн олон улсын байгууллага билээ. Дэлхийн зүүн олон улсын байгууллагын Аз номхон далайн бүсээс 1993 онд Монгол улсын зуудын гамшигт өртсөн иргэдэд туслах яаралтай тусламжийн төслийг хэрэгжүүлснээр үйл ажиллагааны эхлэлээ тавьсан ба өөрийн суурин төлөөлөгчийн газрыг Дэлхийн зүүн Монгол нэртэйгээр 1995 онд албан ёсоор нийсэн. Дэлхийн зүүн Монгол олон улсын байгууллага нь бие махбодын шийтгэл болон хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсооё сэдвт хүүхэд хамгааллын 5 жилийн аяныг үндэсний хэмжээнд орон даяар олон улсын хүүхдийн эрхийг хамгаалах өдөр албан ёсоор эхлүүллээ. Энэ аяныг Монгол улсын гэр бүл хүүхэд залуучуудын хөгжлийн газартай хамтарч хүүхдийн эрх, хөгжил, хүмүүжлийн эерэг аргын талаар эцэг эх, хүүхэд, хүн бүрийн мэдлэг, хандлага, дадлыг өөрчлөхөөр зорьж байна.
Хүүхдийн эсрэг хүчирхийллийг зогсоогоо нэгдэж тууц ажилласандаа би маш их баяртай. Түүнээс зогссон өнөөдөр миний баярын өдөр болохоор би бүр их баяртай. Үе тэнгийнхаа хүүхдүүдийг мансайлан хамтран ажиллах нэгдэлтэй итгэлтэй байна. Тэгээд Монголынхаа бүх хүүхдүүдэд энэ аянд нэгдээрэй гэж уриалъя.
5-аас 17 настай монгол хүүхдүүдийн 15.9% нь хүүхдийн хөдөлмөр эрхэлж байгаа бол нийт хүүхдүүдийн 80% нь ямар нэг бие махбодын шийтгэл, асрамжийн газар болон дотуур байранд амьдардаг хүүхдүүдийн 85.1% нь зодуурт өртдөг гэсэн судалгаа гарчээ. Монголчуудын 21.6% нь ядуурлын шугамнаас доогуур амжиргааны түвшинд амьдарч байгаа бол 5-аас 14 настай нийт хүүхдийн 36.5% нь амжиргааны баталгаажих түвшнөөс доогуур орлоготой гэр бүлд амьдарч байна. Хүүхэд бид хүчирхийллийг даслан зогсоохын тулд өөрсдийгөө хөгжүүлж нийгмийн үйл ажиллагаанд идэвхтэй оролцдог. Энэ нь хүүхэд биднийг хувийн зохион байгуулалтаа болгон төлөвшүүлж, зөв харилцаа, багаар ажиллах чадвар зэрэг амьдралын ухаандаа сургаж, ур чадваруудыг маань хөгжүүлдэг. Бид өсвөр үеийнхний хөгжлийн клубийнхэн.
Боловсрал эзэмшүүл мэрэгжилтэй болно, мэрэгжилтэй бол ажилтай бол сайхан амьдралтай байх болоо гэж бодсон.
Ингээд намайгаас хамгаалж хайрладаг ч юм уу тийм аг нийтийн хайр үүсгдэг болохоор найзтай баярлалаа гэж хэлээ.
Энэ зөв боловсон зан суралцаж өөрийгөө нээх чадварт тусалдаг.
Бид өсвөр үеийнхний хөгжил хөтөлбөрт хамрагдсанаар өөрсдөө ямар нэг сайн үеийг санаачлан, төлөвлөн, хэрэгжүүлэн тайлагна.
Нөгөө нэгдүгээр ангийн хүүхдүүдэд тасалсан, багш нарт нь тасалсан. Тэгээд хүүхдүүдийнх нь болохоор нөгөө өсөг сургалтанд тасалсан бол надад амар сайхан санагдсан.
Үе тэнгийн найзуудын маань нийгмийн оролцоо өндөр байгааг алдагдал хаягдлыг алтманг болгохын төслөөс та харж болно. Хаягдал материалаар ахуйн хэрэглээнд ашиглаж болох маш олон зүйлийг санаачилсан байгаа биз? Хог гэж байдаггүй. Юмхнаар хэрэгцээтэй юу ч хийж бүтээж болдгийг тод харуулсан найзуудын маань бүтээл.
Одоо өөрийнхөө сурснаа олох бусдаа хуваалцаад үнэхээр одоо сэтгэл өндөр байна.
Хүүхдүүд бид өөрсдийн амьдарч байгаа орон нутаг, сургууль, гэр бүлийнхээ амьдралд идэвхтэй, хариуцлагатай, бүтээлчээр оролцож байж гэмээр улс орныхоо манлай хөгжлийн түүчээ болно. Бид хүчирхийллийн эсрэг дуу хоолой нэгтэй байна.
Одоо ямар нэгэн буруу зүйл хийсэн бол битээ загнаа, битээ зохио зүгээр тайлбарлаад хэлчихээ.
2014-өөс 2017 оны 5 дугаар сар хүртэлх хугацаанд хүүхдийн тусламжийн утас 108-д бие махбодын хүчирхийлэлтэй холбоотой 3035 дуудлага ирсэн ба харин захим дарамттай холбоотой 244, бэлгийн хүчирхийллийн 417, үл хайхрахтай холбоотой 1120 дуудлага ирсэн байна. 2017 оны эхний хагас жилийн үйл ажиллагааны тайлангаар нийт 29 орон нутгийн хөгжлийн хөтөлбөрийн зорилтод орон нутгуудад хүүхдийн хөгжил оролцооны клубүүдэд нийт 5374 хүүхэд хамрагдсан байна. Мөн түүнчлэн 25618 үе тэнгийнхэн нь сургууль дээр суурилсан үйл ажиллагаанд оролцжээ. Дэлхийн зүүн Монголын зорилтод хот хөдөөгийн орон нутагт нийтдээ 25 хүүхдийн оролцооны удирдах зөвлөл үйл ажиллагаа явуулж байна. Хүүхдүүд маань Монголын ирээдүй. Тэд бол эрх хэдлэгч бөгөөд аз жаргалтай.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you're feeling a little refreshed after that little snack and our tea and coffee. And we saw many of you having wonderful conversations. And we hope that you also found the time to take a look at the materials from the different parts of the world that was left outside in the foyer area. And we hope before you leave for lunch also that you make some time to go back there. We mentioned that one of the Game of Thrones actors, Liam Cunningham, had previously spoken very briefly. And now we're going to take a look at another video, another celebrity endorsement, this time by Jerome Flynn, who is also, as I said, from Game of Thrones. And he visited Myanmar as well. And let's take a look at what he has to say about the work that they've been doing with former child soldiers.
Every year, many thousands of children are forced to serve in conflicts around the world. I've come to Myanmar to talk to former child soldiers and to find out what World Vision is doing to help. I met a young man called Hain, who when he was just 16 years old was forced into the Myanmar army. He didn't want to be identified in this film because even though he managed to escape the army, he's still afraid of repercussions. Hain told me that in the 3 years that he was a soldier, he was forced to shoot 100 of his so-called enemies. World Vision is working with the most vulnerable children here in Myanmar and right across the world to give them the skills, the education and the awareness they need to ensure that they never become child soldiers.
We will take a look at a little later on. We're now moving on to a very interesting panel discussion, Voices of Young People on Ending Violence Against Children. And we have youth delegates from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Philippines, and the Bangladesh. And I'd like to invite our moderator for this session, Pastor Moses Akash de Silva, of the Voice of the Voiceless Foundation, to join us in moderating this session. Of course, you will see and hear more from him in our next session, I believe, about how faith leaders can boost efforts to end violence against children. That is our second panel discussion, and you'll hear more from him as a panelist in that session. But this time around, he will be our moderator, so we'd like to invite Pastor Moses Akash de Silva to join us, and also our panelists that he will introduce.
A very good morning to all of you. And the last couple of days we had the opportunity of meeting these wonderful individuals who have come from different countries, and we were able to talk with them and discuss certain things. And we would like to welcome all of you to our beautiful paradise and to this important moment. And I would like to introduce each of them to you. And we have Megla Akhtar from Bangladesh. And also Ronnie from Philippines, welcome. We also have David from Sri Lanka. And also we have Tehanito from Philippines, from Myanmar. And we welcome you this morning once again. And we're going to go for a small video clip to see what happened during last 2 days of the workshop. Okay, right. So we now would like to invite, they have been talking about how to end violence and different perspective of different things. And I would like to invite, first of all, Megla Akhtar from Bangladesh to come and speak. Megla Akhtar is 18 years old, and she's the president of Durban Child Forum from 2015 to 2017. And currently she's in class 2, and she's going to talk to us about the contribution of children and youth in ending violence against children.
Hello. Hello. Assalamu alaikum and good morning everybody. My name is Meghla Akhtar, President of Child Forum in Bangladesh. Currently studying IM grade in 12. Today I want to share with you how can youth work together with other children and youth to address violence that they face in different contexts. I strongly believe young leaders can protect children from all sorts of violence. A child can understand another child's pains. In Asia Pacific region, over 1 billion children are expected to suffer form of physical and mental violence at home, workplace, institution and other public places. Violence against children has been increasing day by day. On the whole, our children are not safe. Despite there are many efforts made by government and non-government organizations to ensuring the goals of the children. I believe youth can inspire others to take action by showing their own action and good work for a good world. As a young leader, I stopped 5 child marriage in my community, including mine. Now, thank you. Right now, I want to share my experience. When I was around 4 or 5 years old, my parents were separate and my father remarried another woman. I was 6 years old. My mother went outside to other country for a job. I stopped going to school. When I was 13, my auntie and my mother decided to marry me with observers, worker and marriage all conduct in telephone conversations. It was very painful to me. I stopped eating and crying. My mother and auntie threatened me a lot and they didn't hear my single word. During my wedding day on 8 June 2014, I left my home and sit for my terminal examination at school and didn't come back home on that day. Later on, my teacher and friends told my mom and auntie about my feelings and my vision. My teachers feelings and shared the demerits of early marriage. My auntie positively responds to teachers. Hence, I start my study with full consent and subsequently completed grade with GPA 4. There are many girls like me who are the victims of child marriage, child labor, child physical and sexual violence, and if I had not spoken up with my teacher, I would not have been here today. So I feel that you need space and problem to share their views and experience the feelings and situation that they are facing. Youth can be change agent and can change the world. Youth are the present and the future. Youth can play a vital role, can be advocate to raise awareness to end violence against children are facing in everyday life. We can work together with government, NGOs, faith leaders and community to advocate to child protection and can imitate child-led activities for awareness raising such as radio FM, TV, street drama, human chain, meeting and forums and social media campaign, and raise the awareness. So, it takes me, it takes you, and we take the war in violence against children. So I eat easy for you. If you want, you can easily make a difference for the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Megha, for those wonderful words. I think it's very important that we understand and we give the opportunity where we must listen to our children and to our young people. It's very important as adults, as people, that we take time to listen to them and also to give them a platform where they could express their feelings. And I would now like to invite David to come and to speak with us about the contribution of faith leaders. David is a 17-year-old boy who's originally from Jaffna. He's the only child in his family. You know, one of the things in his biography that says is that he's very interested in science, also about dinosaurs. David, over to you.
Okay, hello. Yeah, thank you for that. So, yeah, my name is David Jeevadithan Ambalavana, and I'm studying bioscience in grade 12 in Jaffna, Sri Lanka, and yes, I'm 17 years old. So, I'm going to talk about how I feel faith leaders are very important in helping to end violence against children. So, some time ago in school, I had to do an assignment on world religions. So I found a whole lot of wonderful differences in the origins and beliefs of these religions, but there was one thing that remained consistent through all of them, and that was none of them advocate violence, and that includes violence against children. So in Jaffna, there is a real issue regarding corporal punishment and the physical abuse of children. I myself, along with almost every one of my classmates, have suffered corporal punishment and abuse at some point in our lives. But we had this one teacher who was a priest, who was our class teacher, who was very different, probably one of the only teachers in my school in that regard. He never shouted at us, he never abused us, he never used corporal punishment, but he disciplined us. He disciplined us very well, but he made us understand what some of the things we did were wrong and why we should never do those things in future. So all the other teachers, you know, whenever the class is making a lot of noise, even if there are no teachers to supervise us, would come and beat us and hit us. And the instant they leave the class, the volume just rises back up automatically. However, I noticed that when that class teacher walked past our class, even 2-3 years later, everyone would fall respectfully silent. Now, I feel that that is the kind of respect that no amount of fear or suppression can buy. And furthermore, it proves that nonviolence actually does work, and people who put those into practice are actually respected and admired by students. So what do I feel faith leaders can do to end this issue of violence? Well, most people in South Asia and the Pacific regions are religious and greatly respect their respective faith leaders. And as I said, all religions advocate nonviolence. So I feel that, for example, in the Bible, it said that do not hinder children, for heaven belongs to such as them. And Lord Buddha said, what's done to children is done to the society. So because of this huge religious influence on the people, I feel that faith leaders are very important in influencing the way of thinking of communities. And they have access to many sections of the communities as well. They have access to children, parents, families, and community leaders. Also, the teachings in religion that promote nonviolence, which faith leaders also preach, have been in societies for generations, and they will remain in societies for generations to come. So I feel that faith leaders can and should act as child counselors, get children to truly express their feelings and opinions, because in my experience, a lot of children want to express. They don't like being abused, but they're afraid of what might happen to them as a result of expressing their feelings. Because it's really important they express their feelings, because only a child can truly understand how it feels, the pain of being abused. So faith leaders, they can also impress upon, to parents how to raise children with love and understanding, and also educate teachers on disciplining students using nonviolence. They also have a lot of influence outside these areas. A lot of decision makers and figures in authority are highly respectful of the advice given by faith leaders, such as school principals, government officials, and political leaders. Also, faith leaders, they have a lot of institutions under their own responsibility. So they have the power to ensure that in those institutions, children do not have to suffer that kind of abuse and are given the freedom to express that. So in conclusion, I believe that faith leaders can take our communities a long way if they extend a hand of support and understanding to the youth of our nations. Nandri, Studi, and thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And it says children are like wet cement. Whatever impression, whatever that we make on them, it lasts. So as faith leaders, it's a very important thing that we understand. Having been a faith leader, working with children, one of the things that we have seen, they have a lot of influence on children, especially on what they say and what they do. So it is very important that we understand as faith leaders of our responsibility of modeling these children. And I now would like to invite Tehanito from Myanmar, and she's the youngest and has 2 elder brothers in her family, and she's been engaged in child activities since she was 8 years. So Tehanito, it's over to you.
Minglawa. Good morning, everyone. I am Tehanito from Myanmar. I am 17 years old, and I am studying civil engineering at Technological University. I'm here to represent the voice of the child in Asia Pacific region, especially to end violence against children. I do inspire to participate this precious forum in Sri Lanka. I saw many children in my own country and in Asia Pacific region are facing physical and emotional violence at their home and school day by day. We got beaten, shouting, rough warnings, negative discipline, etc. And so, it makes us feel afraid and threaten trauma, no trust to the adult, depression, demotivate and hopeless to our life. Regarding to the situation analysis of the children in Myanmar, July 2012, there are 82% of teachers, 82% of students said they were beaten if they did something wrong, and 62% of teachers told their students they will be beaten if they do not perform well in a test. More than 42% teachers can students more than once a week. This is not right, and we need to do something to change this situation. On behalf of the children and youth of Asia Pacific region, I would like to share some recommendations for the community. First, community needs to create the safe environment for all children. Community leaders should conduct civic awareness programs to address violence against children. Community have to set a strong monitoring and reporting systems, sharing the knowledge about positive parenting among the peers group at every level. Parents and caregivers need to put attention to their child by showing love and care. Not only parents, but also all the people in the community must to avoid false finish and negative discipline, and must give mutual respect to all children. We, Our children and youth are the driver of the campaign to end violence against children. I do believe that we all have very important role and responsibility for the well-being of the future's leaders. Let's together hand in hand, because Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The time is always right to do what is right." So it takes a world to end violence against children. Thank you for your kind attention. Jesu te mareshe.
Thank you, Tehanito, and I think it's very clear of her recommendations that we as a community needs to create a safer environment for our children, and not just create an environment, but also to follow up and to monitor that our children are safe. And I now would like to invite Ronnie from Philippines, who is 19 years old and has 5 siblings in his family. Ronnie, over to you, and he's going to speak to us about the contribution of the government sector.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ronnie Inco Jr., a youth leader from the Philippines, speaking in front of you as a living testimony how young people can contribute in making a difference and a catalyst in ending different forms of violence against children. I am the youth representative in the Municipal Council for the Protection of Children in our locality. It is an institutional mechanism in the local government unit that facilitates and implements children's programs. It recognizes the role of the children in decision-making processes on the issues that affects them. As their representative, I've lobbied for sufficient allocation of budget for children program, and such as organizing children's association in the villages, conduct of dialogue and local consultative meeting of children, and the strengthening of the village council for the protection of children. This is one way of making sure that children are well represented. We are thankful that the local government in the municipality where I belong saw our potential as partners, not just receivers of the programs. Because of the collaborative effort of the different sectors in our community, to combat violence against children, more cases had been reported and been responded to. More children are being rescued and given appropriate intervention programs, and more preventive approaches were in place. Despite this fact, still, many more children in the country and in the world are still experiencing different forms of violence against them. These are such like physical, sexual, child labor, child early marriage, drug abuse, and child trafficking. These issues break the heart of children and youth. I am asking myself, what kind of future will my fellow children will have if they will keep on experiencing this form of violence? I believe that this rooted in the social problems in the country. Poverty, weak enforcement of laws, and lack of awareness of children's rights. In behalf of the children, I call to the government leaders, especially to those who are here right now, to promote the best interest of the children, create child-friendly policies that will protect the welfare of the children, and intensify the implementation of the child laws. Provide platforms for child participation and representation, especially in the dialogues on issues that affects them. Strengthen child protection mechanism in the localities. This is the time to hear the voices of the children. Because we, the children of today, are the leaders of tomorrow. We support the vision of a safe society for the future generation. We, the children, will work hand in hand with you to build a world that stands up, speaks up for the children, especially to the most vulnerable one. Thank you so much, everyone, and mabuhay.
Thank you, Ronnie, for those wonderful words. You know, one of the things that we also need to understand, you know, when he was speaking about the government's responsibility, you know, I recently read this news article, you know, it says in Sri Lanka there are over 18,000 pending court cases which relates to children. I don't know how true it is, but, you know, it is the government's responsibility, and, you know, it is our responsibility once again, you know, to implement these recommendations, and not just only to implement, you know, it is the government's responsibility for us to create a better future for these children. You know, as always, it's not just one individual that they're representing, it's a generation that they're representing. So thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause one more time for coming here.
Thank you very much, Pastor Moses Akash, for also moderating the session, and thank you very much to our youth panelists. What a great amount of confidence, and this is our future. Can we give them a bigger round of applause, please? The recommendations, Child and Young Leaders Call to Action to End Violence Against Children, is already a part of your folders, so feel free to take a look at that. And also at this point in time, we would like to extend an invitation to those of you in the audience. If you have any questions for our youth panelists, now is the time to check with them and ask. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will bring a mic to you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to perhaps ask these wonderful youth panelists any questions that they might have? We have a very quiet audience suddenly. We have one question, sir, and the mic will be passed to you. Hold on.
Thank you. If you just allow me to sit over here and just ask a question. Let me firstly say thank you. My name is James Cooper. I'm from Liberia. I want to say a big thank you to the panelists and for expounding so well. Now, maybe this question could be picked up from any of you. I guess your own effort, maybe your effort probably within a locality and not a national movement to speak out and advocate on the right of the child. If your effort is within your locality, what are you doing, or what are plans in order to make it much broader, not only to affect a region, but to go across the country, so that those laws will not just be municipal laws, but they can also become national laws and they will affect the country? Thank you.
Was that question clear? Would any of you like to answer it? Anyone in particular? David, perhaps? Can we have our mic back on, please?
So was the question how we can implement laws not just in a local area but in a greater area? Okay. Well, I'm new to this whole World Vision thing, but I think situations like this is a way in which we can implement laws on a greater scale. Bringing people together like this from different countries is exactly that way in which we can decide how to implement laws that aren't just for one country, but for several countries. So, does anyone want to add to that? Or?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really good question, I think.
Hello. In the context, in the community where I belong, what we did is that from whatever we implemented in the locality is being legalized or institutionalized by the national government. As in the locality, we called barangay the smallest political unit or village in the Philippines. What we do is to adopt whatever policies and programs, projects, activities that the national government is implementing, And the question is, how can we make those kinds of programs for children more in national perspective or even in the region? What we should do is to work hard to the community where we belong and serve as an inspiration to other communities. For sure, if other communities will see the effect of the activities, the programs, projects that you are doing in your community, for sure that they will be inspired. And not just in the country where you belong, the good practices you will see in your community may be a testimony and a living testimony to other countries across the region.
Yes, Mr. Dr. Danan would like a microphone also.
This question is for David. Incidentally, I went to the same school that he is attending now. Good school. We went through corporal punishment from grade 1 all the way up to year 12 till we left school. Now, of course, that region also went through a war for 3 decades. What, from a child's perspective, can we do to change the mindset, to change the culture there?
Okay, so from a child's perspective, I feel that a child's first role model are their parents, and after their parents, it goes to teachers. So even if children have certain perspectives, I think they rely on adults to actually create a good living situation for them. But it's a very good question because, yes, Sri Lanka has been through several years of war. And the sad thing for me is that even though we've come out of the war, children are still suffering in schools. So I think from a child's perspective, what we can do is we need to create a situation where children are free. They get to express the issues, I think, because children rely on adults to sort out the issues for them. So I think we should create awareness among adults, parents, and teachers of these issues and how, more importantly, what we can do instead of physical abuse, other methods of discipline to give children a better life. And more importantly, as I said, just ask for their opinion and let children express their feelings. Just ask them what's going on, and they themselves will give us all the details we need. So thank you.
So learning to respect and to listen rather than always be the one in charge and always disciplining them on that front. Dr. Danan, we hope that helped answer your question. We do have a couple more questions. Sir, you have a mic already, so feel free to ask.
Thank you so much. I'm called Menya. I come from Uganda, East Africa. I happen to work with Uganda Muslim Supreme Council implementing a UNICEF program with early child education. I appreciate your submission, especially for the younger generation. What I wanted to get more clarification is to know at the municipal level, where you normally sit to make your policies, the children who are down, I want only to know one thing. How do you come up with your views at the municipal level? Do you use bottom-up approach or bottom-down approach, which helps you to be put on the wish list? Thank you.
Do you need any clarification on that question? Yes, I believe
please.
both.
Okay.
Sir, do you mind elaborating a little bit? You said bottom-up, and then I think that might just, technicalities might be a little difficult, so if you can just rephrase that perhaps.
Fine. Let me stand up, I think.
That might be good too. All right.
I was meaning, by the time you sit at the municipal level, you as leaders, do you get your views from the senior people up, or you go down to the structures, down to the ground, to the one who is not part of you? Where do you get your views, which you normally use as a policy and implementation later on?
That might be...
I think I'm clear.
Which one of you might be, because was the question clear?
Where do we get our views from?
Perhaps you can start, and then if anyone else wants to add on.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very wonderful and quite challenging question.
Yeah.
And sitting in the municipal level as part of my personal experience as youth representative in the municipal level, the approach that I'm using is not, you're referring to going up and going down. No, the approach that I'm using in the context where I belong is going down. It is because as in the municipal level, if you will go to your perspective in the Philippines, we have the provincial level and up to the national level. If you will keep on seeing what is at the going up, those children below, the needs of those children below that you are representing are not addressed. No? That's the reason why we are in the community where I belong personally, we are capacitating the villages, the children's association in the villages, going down from the municipal to the villages so that children will be empowered to the point that they are informed to their rights and empowered to the point that they can voice out to the villages, to the government where they are, to the government where they belong.
So that was a clear answer, but is there something else that you'd like to add on?
Also, lastly, at the municipal level, do you have a code for funding for your activities in your budgeting process?
Yes, sir. In my situation, we have children and youth are given appropriate funds. That's the first time. That's the first advocacy that I've lobbied in the municipal level, because we cannot move without funding, proper allocation of funds for children and youth activities.
Such inspiring stories. Is there anything else, Pastor Moses? Is there something?
Yeah, I would like to explain what Megla said. What she's saying is, it's very important to understand from the bottom-up level, because, from the top it brings the policies, but from the bottom-up system, it brings the change of thinking. So that's her answer.
Do we have any more questions from our audience and from the media as well? We have a lady here, please. There's a mic coming.
I'm interested in asking from Bangladesh and from Myanmar. From the gender perspective, you as girls, could you give us a little bit of information about what, as a girl, you feel is the biggest issues for violence against girls, and what are the kind of solutions that your countries have done to address some of these issues?
Yeah, what's the biggest issue that you face as a girl, and then what's the solution? Yeah, you can explain. Yes, yeah, what's the biggest challenge that you face?
Please come like with me.
Sorry, would you like that question asked again? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm translate like it. Yeah.
Of course. Okay, great. We have our translator here who will. And a mic is being passed. Hold on.
Okay. A challenge.
No.
Mic.
Okay.
I speaking Bangla and translate দিদি তো আমি মেয়ে তো মেয়েদের সমস্যাটা খুব বেশি কারণ প্যারেন্টস ডু নট অ্যালাউ এনি গার্লস আমাদের বাবা মারা সব সময় বাবা মা সমাজ অ্যালাউ করে না যে মেয়েরা এখানে যাবে সেখানে যাবে
Stop, Megla. Girl child are always deprived from the family. Okay, parents always did not allow them to go to the outside of from the home. Okay.
এই ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের ফ্যামিলি থেকে আমাদের সমস্যা দেয়, কারণ আমাদের তারা সাপোর্ট খুব কম করে, আবার কমিউনিটি সমাজ এটার বিপক্ষে থাকে, তো আমরা ওই দিকে সাপোর্ট পাই না, আমাদের সাপোর্টটা খুব কম।
That's why the girl child are behind from the boy child.
চ্যালেঞ্জ
Okay, challenge.
দেন আমরা যখন লোকাল লেভেলে কাজ করতে যাই তখন আমাদের বিভিন্ন বাধা, যেমন
কিভাবে
টু ইন ভায়োলেন্স অ্যাগেন্স্ট চিলড্রেন, এটা কভার করার জন্য আমাদের সব থেকে বড় যেটা দরকার হলো সরকার, গভর্নমেন্ট সাপোর্ট অ্যান্ড সরকার নতুন কোনো আইন তৈরি করবে, সেই আইনটা স্ট্রং হতে হবে, এটা হলো গভর্নমেন্টের জন্য।
Government law should be strong for the girl child.
And local people চিন্তা ভাবনা তারা মনে করে যে একটা শিশুকে মারলেই ভালোভাবে বেড়ে উঠবে।
Local people mindset should be change.
তো আমাদের এগুলো চেঞ্জ করতে হবে এবং এগুলো চেঞ্জ করার জন্য অ্যাওয়ারনেস আমরা অ্যাওয়ারনেস করতে পারি, তারপর মিটিং করতে পারি।
We can do awareness session, meeting and dialogue with the community member within their committee.
All right, thank you, Bangladesh, and we'd like to also thank our translator. And for Myanmar, I believe our youth representative would also like a translator, so we'd like for that mic to be brought back. Oh, you already have a mic, lovely. All right, and the question was clear, and perhaps you'll need, yes, please. Yes, of course.
Okay. Madam, thank you for your questions to our country. သမီးအနေနဲ့ပေါ့နော်ဒီ domestic violence တွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာဘယ်လိုအရာတွေကကိုယ့်အတွက် challenges ဖြစ်စေလဲပေါ့နော်တကယ်လို့မရှိဘူး challenges မဖြစ်ဘူးဆိုလည်းပြောလို့ရတယ်ဘာလဲဆိုအခုအစိုးရကလည်းဒါတွေကိုလှုပ်ဆောင်နေပြီ CSO တွေ INGO တွေကလည်းလှုပ်ဆောင်နေပြီဆိုတာလည်းသမီးတို့လည်းအတူတကွဆောင်ရွက်နေတာဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်ပေါ့နော်ပြောပြလို့ရတယ်ဒီ violence နဲ့အိမ်တွင်းအကြမ်းဖက်မှုနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ဘာတွေ challenges ကြုံတွေ့ရလဲတဲ့မြန်မာပြည်မှာပေါ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေက
ဘာတွေ challenges ကြုံတွေ့ရလဲဆိုတော့လို့ပြောလူကြီးတွေကဒီကလေးတွေကိုရိုက်နှက်တာအဲ့လိုကိစ္စကိုပြောချင်တာရတယ်အဲ့လိုရိုက်နှက်တာကသူတို့စိတ်ထဲမှာဆွဲနေတဲ့အစွဲတစ်ခုပေါ့နော်ကလေးတွေကသူတို့ရဲ့ကိုယ်ပိုင်ပစ္စည်းဖြစ်တဲ့သူတို့ရိုက်ခွင့်ရှိတယ်အဲ့လိုအထင်မှားနေတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်လူကြီးတွေဘယ်လိုပြောဒီမိသားစုတိုင်းမှာရှိတဲ့လူကြီးတွေကအဲ့ဒီအစွဲကိုသူတို့ရဲ့စိတ်ထဲမှာထားတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ပြင်မယ်ဆိုရင်အားလုံးပြင်မရမယ်အဲ့ဒါအခက်အခဲတစ်ခုသားသမီးဆိုတာမိဘရဲ့အုပ်ထိန်မှုအောက်မှာနေရတာလေအဲ့ဒါကြောင့်မိဘကိုမလွန်ဆန်နိုင်ဘူးဘယ်လိုပင်စီးမြင့်နေရှိတော်ညာလဲကိုကတကယ်တိုင်တန်းဖို့ရောလူကြီးတို့အပြစ်ပေးဖို့ကြတော့ကလေးတွေမှာအလောက်ထိမတက်နိုင်အဲ challenge ဖြစ်ပါတယ်
Okay I would like to share our perception to the parents and caregivers. The first one is according to some area we have cultural and traditional. The parents have they are very authoritarian type and they are shouted. They are talking about the wrath wording and also they oppress their children day by day. That is not only the whole country, but also other cultural conflict country area. And the second one is in our country. Nowadays, we are collaborating with the INGO, NGO, and other CSO sector with the government for the not only the violence issue, but also we implement. They implemented with the gender issue. Gender activities, so that's why now they are going well and not much violence at her home and her neighbor environments.
We hope that helped answer your question, ma'am, and thank you very much to our translator and also to our panelists. Pastor Moses Akash, is there anything you'd like to add before we close our session?
See, I think it's very important that we understand the role of adults in this very special moment. As you could see, these young children, how they brought up all these different aspects, and I think one of the things that we as people need to understand is that it's our responsibility to create a safer environment for children. At the end of the day, we could talk, we could decide, but it is our actions that will take this movement ahead. Let us believe that it's not just going to be another action, but a long-term plan where we will create a better future for our children. And once again, thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope that you all enjoyed this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Moses Akashi Silva. And of course, to our youth panelists, thank you very much for joining us and for your conversations with us and for your insight. And thank you so much once again. Of course, I'm sure some of you in the audience, we saw a few hands going up a little later on during the conversation, but we couldn't accommodate your questions. Our delegates will be at lunch, so feel free to ask them these questions then, and I'm sure they'll be able to relate their stories and answer those questions for you. We now have another short video that we'd like to share, another celebrity endorsement, and this time it's by Mark Nelson, who is a World Vision Goodwill Ambassador in the Philippines, and he is a respected TV host and one of the former anchors of Asia's Got Talent. He is a staunch advocate for Filipino children and their right to protection, and faithfully sponsors more than 10 children each year. Living in a disaster-prone country, he is also a champion in promoting disaster risk reduction. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
There is nothing worse for children than experiencing violence, exploitation, and neglect. It happens in every country, every city, and community. But World Vision is committed to stand and speak out to protect children from harm and seek restoration. World Vision's global campaign, It Takes a World to End Sexual Exploitation of Children, aims to catalyze a global movement of people united to keep children safe. Children deserve better. They deserve to grow up happy, healthy, educated, loved, and protected. Support World Vision and take meaningful action to end violence against children everywhere.
Hearing from people around the world about It Takes a World to End Violence against children. We're now moving on to our second panel discussion, how faith leaders can boost efforts to end violence against children. Our moderator is Reverend Christo Grayling, World Vision Senior Director of Faith, Advocacy and External Engagement. And he was co-responsible for the development of the Channels of Hope methodology, which has catalyzed nearly 500,000 faith leaders in 45 countries to respond to difficult development issues such as child protection, maternal and child health, HIV, and gender. He is passionate about collaborating with faith-based agencies and faith actors to meaningfully contribute towards SDG outcomes as well as child well-being. So we'd like to invite Reverend Christo Grayling to join us and also to introduce the panelists.
Thank you very much. I need to lift this thing a bit higher. I'm so impressed by the words of the young people who just bring the reality home of what needs to be done. We said it all a number of times. It takes a world to end violence against children. But it also takes faith to end violence against children. And as you've heard just in this video clip just now, we want to create a movement. This is not something where World Vision want to go alone. We want to really bring alongside faith leaders, faith communities, churches, as we engage together on this. And that's why this panel is very important, that we really want to bring about a movement of change. So World Vision as a Christian organization is very serious also in our new strategy that we just developed and announced around the fact that we want to work in a strong commitment about partnering with the church and other faith-based agencies on the issues that affect children. And clearly this is one of them. Faith leaders, or as the young people already said, have access, they have influence, and they have the reach. So therefore, in terms of a holistic, with a W, holistic response to ending violence against children, faith is an integral part of that. But we must also be honest with one another that sometimes faith actors, faith leaders can also be part of the problem. And as a reverend myself, you just heard that, I cannot speak on behalf of all faith leaders, but personally, to the young people, I just want to apologize for any harm that faith leaders might have caused in terms of neglect or abuse or being silent when we should have talked about it. But I believe it takes faith to end violence against children. If faith leaders get mobilized and if faith actors and agencies start together to address this, this really brings an opportunity to add another dimension of how we can work together as agencies, as development agencies, as policymakers, and as faith leaders to address this together. In the work with the campaign already, we have got brought together a number of agencies like World Council of Churches and World Evangelical Alliance and Global Network for Religions for Children and a number of others who already endorsed this campaign as a faith partner and said, we want to do this together. And a number of others in the room are already starting to say, we want to be part of this as well. But also regionally, we want to duplicate this. Asia has just formed the Asia-Pacific Faith-Based Coalition for Sustainable Development, which includes the addressing of ending violence against children, which includes organizations like Arigato International, Islamic Relief, ACT Alliance, Soka Gaikai, and then World Vision. This is honestly an attempt to say, as people of faith, as faith-based organizations, how can we take hands and address this together so it's not only a World Vision campaign. This is our campaign, I hope. And part of that, Jean Duff was on the stage a bit earlier. She's leading with some others the Joint Learning Initiative on faith and development. And a critical new hub that came about is also to say we need the evidence to show what the role of faith is on ending violence against children. And therefore, there was just at the last United Nations General Assembly a hub launched that will bring the evidence of you who are all working in this field together so that we can bring this to the policy table to show how faith contributes to ending violence against children. So with this, I want to ask our panelists to come and join us at the table so that we can hear from the horse's mouth how we will do this. So I invite all the panelists on board, and then I'll introduce you from upstairs. So Atala, Pastor Moses Akash, Venerable Galkande Damananda, and Brahmakash, forgive me if I say the difficult words wrongly, Brahmachari Darshan Chaitanya. If you want to join upstairs on the chairs, it'll be great. So see if this one's on. Yeah, okay. I had the privilege to work alongside Atala Fitzgibbon for a long, long time. We have been working on the learning exchanges with the United Nations on helping the United Nations staff understand faith-based organizations and how to work with them. Atala has led the development of Islamic Relief's last two global strategies from 2011 to 2021, and he's also involved in leading on the drive to improve faith literacy and localization within Islamic Relief's work and the development of Islamic Relief's conceptual framework and theory of change on humanity. But I know this whole issue of ending violence against children is a passion for you. I'm going to ask all of you the same question. Atala literally walked in from the airport now, so Atala, and first on, I'm going to ask all of you the same question. What is the one thing that you face in mobilizing your faith community to end violence against children? And at the same time, how have you, or how do you plan to overcome that challenge?
Do you want me to answer both questions? Okay. Good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning. Yeah, I'll try and make sense. I'm a little bit jet lagged, but so for us, one of the biggest challenges is that within many Muslim communities, there's quite an alienation between faith leaders and secular actors, academics. Sometimes there's a different tradition around education, so you get very large madrasa systems that often develop in parallel to the state systems. So some madrasa systems, they don't benefit from formal child protection training and sensitization. And then there's really complex issues which perpetrate violence against children, such as FGM, such as common culture around child beating, and a range of others. And one of the biggest ones is early and forced marriage, which is a blight upon children's lives, particularly girls, whose life chances are so affected. And they're very complex problems. Early and forced marriage is an extremely complex problem. It's a lot to do with poverty, obviously. So they're not easy things to approach. And every issue has a slightly different theological side to it as well. So our challenge is that actually there's a lot of faith literacy around dealing with these issues. If you're going to approach them from mobilizing from, in our case, very often it's the Muslim community's own understanding of what the children's rights are. It's no good going in and saying, well, they have a right, it's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that they have to. The community will just look at you in sort of puzzlement, what's this? And so we, early on in this, and Christo and World Vision has really been helpful in taking Islamic Relief on this journey, because I was amazed at their work and how courageous and really sort of innovative they've been around this. Is that you have to create that internal mediation. You have to empower your faith actors, particularly your faith leaders, with the knowledge that they need. And very often, in these complex areas, you need to bring science and religion together. So often when we've started developing a module, we'll get a theologian working with an academic, a secular academic. And that will enable the theologian to understand really what the issues are. So with FGM, when we started doing the work on developing policy around FGM, the senior scholars, when they heard what the health impacts of FGM were, they said, "Oh, this is a no-brainer. This must be forbidden if it's harming people's health, because the protection of health is one of the ethical principles that underpins Islamic law. So if you're doing something that damages your health, it's wrong." So we needed to approach this from a strong theological input, and so the challenge was that often this work wasn't there. We had to create this work. We had to get theologians and scientists and academics working together on these complex issues to understand, for instance, what the health impact of early marriage is, where there's so much evidence now, but that evidence isn't often accessible to faith leaders. So we've found it extremely good approach. We've been surprised also how open faith leaders are to it. You often put up the barriers in your own mind and think that they're going to be resistant, but they're not. And fortune favors the brave. So actually going and talking to and working with faith leaders is important. And it's one of the big things that Christo and I, particularly, we advocate for in the secular world, particularly in Europe. It's extremely secular. And using faith in this way is an anathema to many Western agencies. But we've been working recently more on the evidence, as Christo said. If we can bring the evidence, and the evidence from the rollout of the Channels of Hope program is good, both from the evaluations as well as from our own experience, because we spent a lot of time working with World Vision to develop a Muslim version, and we've only started rolling it out in the last couple of years, but we had amazing results. Recently we had a village or a large village in Ethiopia who all agreed, they made an agreement to give up the practice of FGM within that community. But getting to that point, requires a lot of work, and it has to come from people's own hearts. And we have a saying in the Quran, there's a verse that says, God says, you won't change a people till they change what is in their hearts. So you have to work on that internal mediation, not only within the community, but within people's hearts. I won't go on too much.
Thank you, Atala. We'll come back to more questions on that later if you have questions on that. Let's move on to Pastor Moses, Akash. You all have these the little bios in there, so I'll just lift out a few things from Pastor Moses. He serves in the children's ministry as a pastor of the Bethany Christian Life Center at the Assemblies of God Church. And he's currently also the director of Voice of the Voiceless Foundation, which involves different projects to uplift the lives of children in Sri Lanka. They built a school, run an education center, have a safe house for vulnerable children in Colombo, preschool for underprivileged children. Wonderful to have you with us, Moses. So the same question applies for you. So what's that one thing that you face in mobilizing your faith community and ending violence against children, and how do you overcome that?
Blessed morning to all of you. One of the greatest challenge that we as Christians face in our country is the fact that the organizations have been labeled into different organizations where we try to promote and convert people. Whenever we try to go to the community, there's this concept in Sri Lanka where you call it NGOs. The moment you put your this NGO thing, people think you are a traitor to the country, or you are a person who try to convert people into Christianity. So as a church, as a Christian faith organization, I think that is one of the main challenges that we face. Even though we genuinely want to help people, even though we genuinely want to uplift the life of children, to end violence against children, sometimes when we go to the communities with the perspective that people have about Christianity and about Christian organizations in Sri Lanka, in current context, we've been labeled as NGOs, and the moment you try to go to a certain community, they would prevent us from reaching to the needy. Sometimes it could be to children. As for my experience, having been working with so many communities, one of the greatest challenge that we face is that we have been restricted. So it is purely with the intention of helping people, purely with the intention of what Christ has taught us to do, show love to your neighbor. But the biggest challenge I would say that we are facing currently is the fact that we've been restricted. Even sometimes you speak with the authorities. Of course, NGO stands for non-government organizations, but the perspective that people have is a very different one. So a challenge that we face also, when it comes to religion, when it comes to working with children, the holistic approach is not there, I would say. Sadly, churches are more focused on adults and less focused on children. It is a fact that, we see in a lot of places that we give the least priority to the children. The church is well built and everything is well built, but if you go to the children's ministry or to the Sunday school, you would say, it's a small place or it could be under a tree or something. So the perspective that children get, the recognition that children get is very low. I think it's a very important thing that we built a culture where children are being welcomed, children are being appreciated and children are being, been taught well in a holistic approach, not just about religion, but also about the different aspects. So the two main challenges I would say that we are facing is the fact that we are restricted in reaching to people, and also that we need to bring up a holistic approach to children.
You mentioned the need to break through the barriers that typically exist, and I think the examples that you mentioned here of different ways that you create care places and welcoming places for children is great. Is there a way that the church can also play a role in making sure that churches are a safe place for children?
Yes, I would say, as I said, it is, one of the things that I've always seen is, it's more adult-focused environment. So therefore, sometimes we hardly say a good morning to a child where we, when we come to church and when we say children. So I suppose it is the responsibility of the church that we create a safer environment. Mostly, I think it is by welcoming them, even in, Jesus' life, we could see that, Jesus, when disciples rebuked children coming from to Jesus, Jesus said, do not hinder them because the kingdom of God belongs to children such as this. So the question that we need to ask again from ourselves, have we created a safer environment for children?
Good, thank you very much. Venerable Galkande Dhammananda. So now I hope I've got it right. Venerable Galkande is a monk of the Theravada Buddhist tradition. He heads the Walpola Rahulas Institute, where educational training programs are offered for religious leaders and laypersons with an aim to support healing. He's also a full-time lecturer on history, so good to hear that part. And he actually works in the University of Kelaniya in Sri Lanka, where he engaged on issues of social justice and harmony in a pluralistic society. So it's a very interesting role that you play, Venerable Galkanda. So in terms of, from your perspective, in terms of the one thing that you face in ending violence against children, what is it and how do you address that?
Among the challenges I have faced, the hardest challenge I faced is that the culture. In the culture, there is a belief that if you want to nurture, bring up a good child, you have to punish them. You have to use violence, in a way, punishing them. And there is a cultural saying that if you do not stir the soup, you will, the same manner you have to, beat and punish the child to make him a good person. And secondly, when I work with school teachers and parents, the strong argument came was that even I was punished when I was a child, and at home and at school and wherever. And now I have to be thankful to those people who, I'm not angry with them. And that is what made me, that kind of belief. That is the major challenge I have faced. Even from religious leaders, Buddhist monks, they have argued that, this is not something. And the other thing, it is not I'm going away for other challenges, but the way of looking at this non-violence against children, then the idea, what you are preaching is Western concepts. These are not ours. So those are the major challenges faced. The way to address this issue was first to understand, compartmentalize understanding something, violence against children, but the whole community, the society, culture, and we, as our children pointed out, we face a war, 30 years of war, and religion that you believe. That is when we address the Buddhist people, and then to bring role models from the faith traditions. If we address the Buddhist community, we ask, what is the role model that you like your child to be? What is the Buddha, right? Buddha. So think of the childhood of the Buddha. What kind of that story says Buddha's childhood, the best care and the love, protection, and okay, if you want, this is the kind of model. And third thing, we try to, as an organization, Walpolo Rahula Institute, we have a model work to, to others to copy or continue. What we strongly believe, preaching has little meaning if we do not, be a role model or example. And when one enter into our institute, the first thing that one see is this board, this saying, please enter these premises having let go as much as possible of views such as nationality, ethnicity, religion, caste, sexual identity, and other views which are mostly decided at one's birth. This is what one see when you enter the space. You are not discriminated. Come, and in our children's program, we do not ask children to come in. We don't have uniform, whatever the dress that and then no need to bring books or pencil or anything. We provide things, whatever needed according to the activities, and then student-centered, activity-based education. The only religious thing that we introduce is the mindfulness or silent sitting. No, so any religious child from any background can come and join the program. Parallel to this program, we have sessions for parents where we emphasize the need of being an example. And there we bring examples from the adults that we have gathered. One example is now he is a father. He, as a child, he had been a very good painter. And he has painted a girl, seen a picture, he has painted a girl. The girl's dress was very short. And when that person showed the picture to the teacher, she has thrown it away. See, don't, draw this kind of shame, Then onward, he has never, and that kind of example to see how even though everyone believed that we have been brought up by, we became good people because we were beaten. No, you don't see the harm that you are doing. See the example, That is how we are working, and I'm sure in the, So the last thing thing we emphasize, if you use violence against children, first thing that the children learn is to use violence, anything that the child, that child do not agree with. He learns to use the violence. That is the message that we try to communicate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Let's move on to our last panelist. Brahmachari Darshan Chaitanya is a monk from the Chinmaya mission. He is presently based in the Chinmaya mission of Sri Lanka as a resident Acharya, and he is engaged in sharing of the knowledge culled from the scriptures in the modern context motivating adults and young people to enable them to become positive contributors to society. Now that links excellently to the role in terms of what we are discussing here. So what would you say is the one thing that you face in mobilizing your faith community in ending violence against children, and how? That's the big question. How do you address it?
Usually when they ask, what do you say? One thing is difficult to choose. Okay, let me try to exceed a little bit on that, but to start with, as it was pointed out by Venerable Thera as well, and of course the young adult who spoke in our previous panel discussion, 30 years of war, which has been going on in Sri Lanka. And, the whole generations have been born and brought up, and they themselves have produced children. Now, the interesting part about this war is that people were dislocated, their lives disrupted, family lives, their education disrupted, etc. So as a result, what has happened is the whole value system has been impacted. How to respect adults, how to treat children, all of these. Nobody has learned how to do these things because they were too busy just surviving, just living each day, finding the food and avoiding bombs and avoiding bullets, and they've been living like that. So 30 years of life like this, and the whole value system has been lost. And now we have a unique situation, especially in North and East, in schools and all that. When you bring up children, parents do not know how to bring up children. And children also do not know how to react to parents, how to react to teachers when they ask you to do something. These are very serious issues which as a community, as a country, we are trying to deal with. This is one of the issues which is very unique to Sri Lanka because it has gone through this civil war. Then other issues, as I would say, is that I always say, as Venerable Thera pointed out, we have to also learn to address the cause. The violence and all what we see and what we are trying to do, we are trying to address the effects, but we also have to try and trace the cause. Now, the people who commit these violence, the violence is an action. Violence is an action, and actions are result of thinking. So, the wrong thinking results in this kind of action. So now we have to teach the adults to think right. What is your problem? The desire management, anger management, stress management. These are the issues they have. And when they do not know how to handle this, then it ends up as violence, and especially against children. This is what we see. It could be parents, it could be teachers. And as I jokingly say, most of the parents are not qualified to be parents. I'm not going to be popular for saying that. Because you don't have to pass any test. Am I right? You just play it by ear, as they say. You trial and error. When your child behaves like this, now how do you respond to that? Parents are not, they have not done major on child psychology. And what is worse is teachers in the schools. Now, most of the teachers in Sri Lanka, I don't know about other countries, most of the teachers in Sri Lanka, they are in the teaching profession not because of their devotion to teaching, but because it's a job. It's a sad reality. So they also do not know how to handle children. So these are the issues we have to face, we have to address. So we are in the business of educating the adults. We have to teach the parents, we have to teach the teachers how to handle children. First, before learning how to handle children, how to handle yourselves, how to handle your own thinking. This is something which we need to learn to address. And I think religious leaders, faith leaders have a great role to play in this area. That's the second thing. And the third thing, what I would like to highlight is that adults should treat children as children. They are precious and they are children, and we should learn to treat them as children. Don't ever treat them like adults. Do not expect them to behave like adults. We may say yes, but then we do. When they do not behave in a particular way, we get angry. Why? Because we expect them to think like us, behave like us. And we are also guilty of treating them like adults when you have even things like beauty pageants. Okay? We sit and we admire and say how beautiful he looks, how beautiful she looks. But you are dressing them like adults and you are treating them like adults, and naturally that will lead to other perversions. So we have a very serious issue. Never ever treat children like adults. Treat them like children. Remember that. And we use them in commercials, advertisements. We use them in entertainment. So these are also leading to wrong thinking among the adults as well. And children also are watching this, and they are also learning the wrong things. And they are going to be the parents in future. And one last thing I would like to mention is that the contradiction in our society. Now we are talking about violence against children. But is violence anywhere else all right? Because, you see, you can't have double standards. See, if you look at the entertainment, whether it's movies or TV programs or even the games, which are full of violence. So the children and adults, all of them are fully, they are in the midst of violence in terms of, in the name of entertainment. They grow up seeing this violence, and they grow up seeing this violence thinking that it is all right. When you watch the entertainment programs and all that, you lose sensitivity towards the violence. Then when you lose sensitivity towards the violence, then what would you do? Because this is what you have seen in the entertainment, this is what you have done for your games. In the games it's all right to kill somebody, hit somebody. Then you can't tell the child it is not all right to hit the real child. So when you grow up with these things, then what happens is our thinking gets changed. We lose sensitivity, and then that becomes our action when we grow up. So unless otherwise we figure out a way of arresting this, saying no to violence in any form, not only against children, not only against the other human beings, but even in the name of entertainment. If we do not address this is going to continue. So these are the things what we see as issues as faith leaders, and faith leaders also can play a great role in trying to change this. Of course, there are other institutions playing their role in addressing the effects. Let them do that. But faith leaders have a greater role to play in changing the thinking, because we are talking about character building. We are talking about changing the attitude of the people. So this can be done only by faith leaders, and faith leaders should come together and address this. And one last thing I would like to say, it is in relation to the theme here. It takes the world to end the violence against children. It is true. Because this should not be seen as a problem between parents and children. Though these children are born to a particular biological father and mother, the children belong to the entire humanity. And the entire humanity is responsible for these children. Not only the biological father and mother. And as humanity, we are responsible for the well-being of these children. And it is our responsibility as human beings to ensure that this violence against children is eradicated. Otherwise, what is going to happen is the cost to the humanity and cost to the society, the world at large, is going to be far more greater Even from economical point of view, it makes far more sense to address it rather than face the consequences of that in time to come.
Thank you very much. What I've heard from most of you is really understanding the context and how the history of a specific country, in York, Sri Lanka is an excellent example of that, is critical in understanding also where people come from and how violence are associated with that. And then the role of specifically of faith to interact in that situations and to bring some understandings, corrections to that in terms of parents and the raising of children. A common theme that came up is the whole issue of physical punishment of children and how that is raised and versus non-violence, and that parents are not born with an encyclopedia on how to raise a child, that they're not giving it when they have their first child. That we all realize, I do too. But then to go back to Scripture, and I think that's what you both of you said, is how important it is to go back to what Scripture's saying and to draw the lines for faith leaders to understand what our own Scriptures say and to have some clear principles on that and to bring that through then to believers, to people of faith, and to help them also as faith leaders not to emphasize issues that might be wrong understood in terms of that. That's a mouthful of issues that you've raised. You ended off by saying it's not only an individual issue. Yeah, there's an African statement that says it takes a village to raise a child. It's not something that we can tackle by our own or it's in isolation from one another. And clearly we've said faith plays an incredible, important role to bring the right understandings. What you started to say, Atala, was is also the opportunity for faith leaders to have that safe space where they can struggle with some of these texts and to really come back to that again. I want to open it back to questions from you. Anyone who have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll start this side with Rob and move that way. If you grab a mic.
Christo, thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. Tell this disillusioned, slightly cynical, want to believe believer that we can do more than just work from the bottom up, because that's what I've heard today. We're working from the bottom up. Do we have plans to try and influence from the top down? And let me be very specific here. We have a regional problem that is happening in Myanmar. And Bangladesh is involved. It is ethical, it's ethnic, it is various religious groups, it's probably economic underneath it all. Do you have some way of addressing the incredible genocidal violence that is being practiced against those wonderful little children that I've wandered amongst in Sitwe, in the concentration camps there? Goodness knows how many of them are dead now. This is an ongoing, and I can't believe it. We keep saying never again to genocide, never again. What on earth are we going to do as faith leaders to address that persistent evil that is generated against children through this kind of violent conflict that is a mix of a whole lot of things?
Thanks, Rob. This is a really good question. Islamic Relief has been working recently with an organisation called the Network of, got to get it right, Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, with a view to trying to tackle issues of religious intolerance and violence, particularly. And violence is, this type of religious intolerance comes from two things. It comes either from people doing violence against a community because they're prejudiced against that community, usually because they've built up those prejudices over time. Perhaps that has been helped by their faith leaders, by their communities, by their parents, whatever. And the other reason it happens is because there might be a particular theological understanding why they're doing that act against a child, as my colleague said, because they might believe it's best. You know, this famous saying, punish the child or save the child by punishing him, that it's something that's spare the rod, save the child. Yeah, that's it. But the particular issue you raised was really interesting, because one of the things that the network does a lot of high-level diplomacy, so they get faith leaders like the Dalai Lama and others, and then they try and affect local situations, send delegations. But one of the problems they've identified is that actually there is this mismatch, there's this disengagement. So you have this very high-level initiatives which don't filter down, and what you're raising is that we also have low-level initiatives which don't filter either horizontally or vertically. And one of the projects we're working on, and we put a funding bid in, is to work with the Institute of War and Peace Reporting to work with faith leaders to promote faith messaging within communities through social media. So to try and, I mean, one of the principles that we use to break down violence is sort of social group contact theory, which means that I might hold a prejudice against a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jew or a Christian until I actually meet them, I sit down with them, I meet their families, I find out about them, I develop a relationship. And then there's a kind of contract there, an unspoken contract. We understand our joint humanness, and something happens. And so what would be very interesting would be to look at actually how social media, and a lot of the communities we're working with don't access social media, so you maybe have to use radio and other things, and how social media could be used. But at the moment, it's mainly used by the populist, intolerant messaging. But how could we turn that round?
Right. Rob's question is, how do we go from just bottom up to also actually reach policymakers? Anyone else? Otherwise, I go to next question. There was a hand here in the middle. Yes, please, if you can pass the mic to the lady. There you go. Yeah, here in the middle. Okay, you have the mic to ask your question now, and then we go to the lady in the middle.
I want to thank God for the panelists. I have really been blessed and challenged, especially by the last speaker, who made mentions of a lot of catastrophes that are happening to the children in our communities. I am Reverend Peter. I'm coming from Sierra Leone, West Africa. I want to come to Pastor Moses. I mean, just to be clear on one or two things you said, because this is talking about the world. And if we are talking about the world, then Sierra Leone is part of it. And I want to see what I can do concerning the issues you raised. One of the issues you raised was that your problem is how you reach other people because they have a fear that you are, evangelizing them, bringing Christ to them. And that's a hiccup. I would like to know how you think we can work, because this is everybody's business. How I can go back to do the same thing and work on it so that by the time we meet next time, I will have a testimony to share. Not only that, I think Dave mentioned about, the children we have. We said some of the places we think that are safe can also be unsafe for the children, vis-a-vis the church, the mosques, our house of prayers. What can we do? Because you said maybe just, the way we greet them. Is that only enough? Or is there anything we can do more to make sure that that place, that faith place, that the father, the mother thinks is not safe for her, for her daughter or for his daughter, be a very good, comfortable place for that child to come? For instance, if in my church, Dr. So is not happy for his daughter to come for choir practice from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock because of the last experience, what can I do to transform the minds of the people, the mindset of the people who want their children to come but are scared because of the last testimony?
I think in order for us to, to create a safer place for our children, I think, it's a common thing that I've seen, like when the caretakers or whoever the people who are in charge of it, we just pick whoever we think is best. And, it could be, one of the things that me as a pastor, as a person who works with children, what I do is, it's always important to, understand the person and, find out the facts about that relevant person, not just because you are passionate and just because you have a heart and just because you want to work with children, you should not recruit kind of people. It is very important that you sterilize the people who come to work with you, especially when it comes to children, Sadly, in our context, what we have seen is like we just handpick people whom we think, and, that leads to a lot of unsafe situations. So, for me personally, I would say that it is very important that we find out about the person, not just take random people, whoever just wants to come and serve or come and work with children.
Yeah, just on that topic, Reverend Peter, the World Council of Churches does develop a very good toolkit that can be utilized for churches and faith-based organizations on how to make sure that a church or a mosque is a safe place and how to have policies in the churches or mosques that will make sure that children will stay safe within that context. Last question, I think, here in the middle.
And my name is Halimo. I'm from Somalia, representing Somalia NGO Consortium, who is representing almost 86 international and local organizations operating in Somalia. And my point is, violence or ending violence against children is not, the campaign is not very new. We are almost doing this campaign for almost the last 20 years, particularly in where I come from. And usually, the organizations who are leading this campaign are mainly from international organizations. And what happened, for my experience, is usually international organizations, usually they call and invite faith-based or religious organizations to deliver their message on their behalf. So in this sense, it looks like sometimes we are not very sincere to end the campaign. So my question to the panel is there a way that we can take the faith-based and religious organizations can take the leadership seriously without depending, without waiting the invitation coming from international organizations project? Thank you so much.
Yes, I think what you pointed out is a very valid point. That is what my experience as well. When we go to it works two ways. One is depending on the international organizations and how far then the work that is done. Second is how the people understand the message. And they look at it as something, come from outside and not one of ours. And in both the way, this affect very, badly. If I am to, tell you what we are doing, and there we never depend on any other organization. This is a strong decision, policy decision that we have taken. We depend on the people, and that model we developed from, again, that religious tradition. Buddha depended on people with the bowl. He goes house to house and find the food. So that model we implemented as a policy. We depend on people, not from organizations. And then the people who contribute are part of what the ownership is with them. They know that, this is our program. And then the way of communicating the message to the people. There we bring out, script, praises and examples, role models, incidents from, not from the other world, but what is closer to them. Then, these two ways works well. That is the experience that I can share with you.
Non-violence is not easy. We may talk about violence against children, but then we may be committing violence in some other areas. We understand physical violence, we understand emotional violence, we understand violence about sexuality. Similarly, violence about spirituality also. We have no right to violate the spirituality of another individual. Just because that person is in a need of, we have to address a need of that person, we have no business to violate the spirituality. If every person who is engaged in this activity, if they understand this, then this problem will not be there. But unfortunately, they are also contributing to the problem in one way or the other. It's a fact, and as most Father said, we have to face these issues. There will be suspicions, but we have to deal as faith leaders. What we have to understand is we are not there to divide people, because division will eventually lead to violence. We can't preach non-violence in one area and then cause divisions which will lead to violence. So faith leaders have to convey one message: unity. See, we have to serve the humanity. We are not there to divide the humanity. If we are very clear about this, then these issues will not be there.
Thank you. So, I think we've got one more question.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say I value all the contributions, all the panelists. Thank you. I'd just like to say I value all the contributions that all the panelists have made, which are very relevant to the discussion on ending violence. My question is, we've had discussions about bottom-up and horizontal and so on. I'm more interested in the top-down for the time being. I'm a doctor myself and very interested in, for example, prevention of road traffic accidents. Now, I know from experience that, yes, creating awareness, educating the public is very important. But if that was the only existing mechanism to make people realize they have to drive safely, we would have thousands of deaths. So there was a legal mechanism which says this is permitted, this is not permitted. So my question regarding violence is similar. What is the role that faith leaders can take in influencing the powers that be? And many of the countries we are talking about have state religions. How can faith leaders influence decision makers to deal with issues which are clearly wrong? I mean, there's enough and more evidence about violence against children and the effects, physical and psychological and spiritual, that it has. So how, very often, say in Sri Lanka, we've had political leaders who have stood up on stages and said how they were beaten in school, and therefore that is how they've become, I won't become political here, but reached great heights. So that creates an impression which is not really helpful. So how can faith leaders really make an impact and give their guidance to governments and leaders so that these things can be changed for the better of the community as a whole?
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's very common that in a whole range of issues where there's legislation, it's usually very ineffective. particularly in parts of the world where the rule of law is fairly weak anyway, so there aren't enough police, there's not enough resources really to impose the law in any way. So then really it's how you internalize that law. And in our experience, the best way to internalize law in traditional and faith communities is by working with faith actors. And I'd use a couple of examples. One of our partners in Zanzibar, we were working on not we, but they were working on a protection of a coral reef and a fishing area. And the fishermen were using dynamite and fishing nets, which were killing all the fish and the coral, and the whole marine environment was spiraling down, which affects people's lives livelihoods as well in the long term. So why I'm making this is not related to children directly, but why I'm saying it because the methodology they used was they took, because it's a predominantly Muslim community and a very devout Muslim community, they had developed a toolkit that uses Islamic theology on environmental protection. And they worked with the senior scholarship within Zanzibar, the Mufti, and then they filtered it down, and they did training with imams, and it was extremely effective in changing practice. And so it's that same theory we would use in child protection. So with early marriage, it's a very complex issue that for instance, most Muslims won't take the law too seriously unless it's actually kind of imposed on them, because their religion, they'll say their religion allows them, their children to marry after puberty, or their daughter to marry after puberty. So you really need to then unpack that for them and enable the faith actors to spread a message that that's not necessarily correct, and for a whole range of reasons, and that for a human rights reason, for a health reason, even for religious reasons, because Islamic law is developed contextually, so it might have been correct 1400 years ago, but society and culture has changed, norms have changed, we know more about things, but our lifespans have changed. At the time when the Prophet Muhammad came, in Arabia probably the average lifespan was about 30, 35 maybe, 40. Children, you'd get half of children dying in their early years. So it's this which we find is effective. It's faith leaders spreading messages from the pulpit, from the minbar, from wherever, which actually is more effective in terms of changing practice. Although I accept that in terms of road deaths, the legislation, having police and cameras and all of that stuff is extremely successful as well.
Thank you, Atala. I wish we had time for more questions, but I realize our time was walking out. I believe that a campaign like it takes a world to end violence against children, and it takes faith to end violence against children. It's something that offers an opportunity to recognize the local voices that are already busy fighting against violence against children in a unique way, and hoping to provide avenues where we can stand together and elevate that voices from the local field. It needs to what we see is the need to apply faith and to apply the scriptures in our faith towards non-violence and the protection of children, and help to sensitize faith leaders and to elevate advocacy for those that already have acquired those skills, so that we also can get to that policy level to change, as Rob has lifted out, to make sure that faith speaks positively into the policy table and demonstrate how we can collaborate on ending violence against children. It takes faith. to end violence against children. Thanks to the panel. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Grayling, and of course to our panel of faith leaders. Thank you very much for your insight and for all those thought-provoking nuggets of information that we have that we will take with us and hopefully also use in making these changes that we are supposed to. Now you are all here, our whole audience is present because you are a part of an organization or you're an individual who is a part of this huge chain link of making change. But we would like to ask you to be a little more vocal. We have a pledge, there is a pledge, and we would now like for you, our audience, in joining us and making this pledge together. The pledge will appear on either side on our two screens, and we would like for you, there it is. I know it's a little bit of a small font. You may have to strain your eyes if you are at the back, but this is a very, very important pledge, and we would like to ask you, our audience, to please rise and take this pledge with us in making this change. I want, and please say this with me, I want all violence against children to stop. I believe it is possible. I will strive for this, and I call on world leaders and my leaders to do more to make it happen. Children safe, I ask leaders to make sure the laws and systems are in place to protect them, that the people who care for them are supported, and those who hurt them are punished, that safe environments are provided, and that we amplify a child's call for action to the world. It takes a world to end violence against children, and I want to be a part of that. I pledge to do my part to help end violence against children. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You have taken this pledge. Please be seated. And you have now made a personal pledge to make sure this happens. Of course, like I said, you are all a part of perhaps an organization that is a part and parcel of this work. But this is a reminder to you that I think it was our youth panelist from Bangladesh. She started off by saying, it takes me. It takes me, and then she went on to say, it takes the world. So it takes me, and this is how you will also be a part of it. We have our pledge in print, and later on, before you go in for lunch, we would like to urge you to please come and to physically sign it, and this will remain as a reminder of the work that needs to be done. And of course, that will remain there. So that's just a quick reminder. Right now, I would like to invite Mr. Otto Farkas, Program Director, World Vision South Asia and Pacific Region Office, who is stationed in Manila and has brought over 25 years of experience to the international development and humanitarian field, to join us in delivering the closing remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's on behalf of the Asia-Pacific regions, it's my honor to close the day and say a few words, and also thank quite a few individuals and groups that have been involved in this event. I only arrived 2 o'clock this morning. I obviously, like many of you, am feeling a little jet lagged, but I felt so energized throughout this morning, so I hope you're feeling the same. I've been challenged, inspired intellectually, as well as it's a visceral experience. It's a lot about feelings when we engage on the topic of violence against children. And I think, to me, the biggest takeaway is really we can talk about statistics, numbers, they're very important, and intellectually we have to engage with that. But we all authentic in our experience relating to what a child experiences. We might not be experts in delivering speeches, as many of you refer to it. I don't feel qualified to be here because I'm not an expert. Yeah, we're not experts in child rights, perhaps, but we are all authentic in having experienced childhood most of us, I think. But at least through our children, we experience it all over again. And therefore it makes it extremely personal what happens to other children. And so to me, that balancing act, being in this field professionally, is that, you know, how do I balance my feelings and my need for evidence and thoughtful action from top down and bottom up. So just on a personal level, but certainly I feel really energized. And in terms of, I would like to recognize a few individuals and people, as I mentioned, who have really, without whom this event wouldn't have happened. And I would like to thank Madam Secretary from the Ministry of Women and Children's Affairs. I believe she had to leave, but again, it was great to have government presence and commitment. Also, Dr. Rinchen, the Director General for the CIVAC group, and has been a great supporter of our work. And also Jean Duff, who is leading Partnership for Faith and Development. And many of you are here not just for this event, you are here because there is a workshop starting tonight about faith and development and humanitarian action. And Jean and many others have been instrumental in pulling these two events together. And of course, I would like to recognize and thank the faith leaders who you just heard on the panel, and also those who were not able to speak, but you're here. And also our partners, other organizations, UNICEF and others who came and showed us support. And also you're a partner for us as we go about delivering on our commitment and pledge. And of course, the youth delegates. It has been invaluable for all of us to listen from the mouth of the babes, or the insights of a young person or a child is to me often more effective than numbers thrown around. And so it has been really good to have you here and share with us. And of course, I would like to thank the hosts, World Vision Lanka, and the regional advocacy teams who have contributed to the organizing of this and the other event that is coming. So it has been a really remarkable and rich discussion. We have touched on a number of very current issues, including the crisis in Myanmar and Bangladesh provides a backdrop, again, making it so real that these are really overt expressions of violence against children. But of course, we are also aware of all those hidden or lesser known emergencies that we have mentioned, that essentially the scale that we're looking at in this region is phenomenal, right? The issues around child labor or trafficking or sexual exploitation. So those are all hidden emergencies. And just as in the case of a real emergency like internationally recognized emergency like the displacement and refugee crisis in Bangladesh and Myanmar, there are always international attention on that, and there are pledging conferences that happen to solicit support. And so in some ways, this event is meant to kind of emulate or simulate that experience, that we wanted to gather as many different stakeholders to help us launch this campaign. And so that this is a pledge that we all want to make at an organizational level, but also at the very personal level. So I would like to encourage you to, as you go out, to please sign that pledge document that you just repeated and leave your mark. And also, because it is a deeply personal thing for all of us, I also want to put a spin on World Vision's tagline. It takes you and me to take it personal, to take the, to solve the problem against violence in this world. So let's take it personal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otto Farkas. All the recommendations that have been made today by our panelists are already a part of your folder, and of course it will be available on the website and Facebook. And the reason I'm saying this is because we would like for you to go and share these recommendations, share your thoughts with your colleagues, with your friends. We want your voice to be heard, like you did, loud, with your pledge. We want the same energy to go into making sure that all these recommendations are heard as well. Ladies and gentlemen, our formalities for today have come to a close. We would like to once again remind you to please sign the pledge before you leave. And of course, in an era of social media, it's very, very popular. We'd like to ask you once again to make sure you use a hashtag. It takes a word. Use a hashtag when we take a picture. There is a photo booth at the place we're having our lunch, and we'd like to encourage you to take as many pictures as you like with your colleagues and friends, and of course make sure you post those online. So also an opportunity to talk to our youth panelists. Not all of them had a lot of time here, but please engage with your youth panelists, and of course if our faith-based leaders are also going to be present, make sure if you have any questions, please speak to them. Thank you once again for being here. For those of you who are not from Sri Lanka, we hope you enjoy your stay here. This is a beautiful country, and we hope that you find your stay here pleasant. So thank you once again for being here and for being a part of making this change. As we've been saying it over and over again, it takes a word to end violence against children. Thank you so much. Your lunch will be just outside. It's a bit of a walk. It's at Earl's Court, but I believe the World Vision team and those will help guide you or show you the way. It's a little bit of a walk, so be prepared. And we hope you enjoy your lunch as well. So thank you once again for being here.